used to be best buddies, and now we're not. I wish you would tell me why. Okay, everybody. So in the interest of conserving a little bit of battery, we're just going to not turn on the thing until we're ready for, you know what I mean. We're not going to turn on the camera until people are ready. I mean, we might just start now. I mean, screw it. Like, why not? Right, that's good. That's not bad. Okay. Yeah, all right. Got a little bit early, but that's fine. Got a little bit early, but... Okay. You know what? I kind of think we're just going to jump into it right away. Oh, I'm getting noise. One sec. Let me deal with this. Wait, what's this? Oh. I see. All right, I'm getting told. Sorry, I am just reading something. I'll be ready in a second, everybody. I'm just giving you a moment. I just got a message saying to take down one of my videos because it could be risky. And to be fair, that's fine because obviously all my videos are already. So how do I do this? Videos. Right. So I just got to delete. I mean, I can delete both videos, honestly. Delete. Yes. And I'm gonna, I think, delete this one too. I mean, if there's no point keeping them up, to be honest. So, because I've already downloaded it. I've already downloaded it. Yeah. Let me just confirm. Sorry, I'm like trying to. There's no way I haven't downloaded it. I literally downloaded it. Yeah, I downloaded it yesterday. Come on, I've already downloaded it, so I can delete it. All right. And okay, all right, everybody. I don't know if anybody's commented anything. We got hey, hello, hey. My mum got okay, hi. All right. Nice to meet you, Rock. Okay, so we're basically ready. I'm just gonna shut some stuff down. Quit and quit. Okay, everybody, we are ready. So we're gonna turn this on. Is it gonna work? Oh, I was actually expecting it to work. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm gonna do it like this. Boom. Oh, I gotta do the thing. Of course, I've always gotta do that thing with the thing where I do the thing. Okay. All right. I am gonna. I'm wearing my funny outfit again, which is great. You love that. Giggity. Terrible choice. Just gonna do the intro real quick. Hello, everybody. So today we are going to be doing even more of responding to Caelan Conrad, the massive Caelan Conrad 5.5 hour series about how being gender critical is apparently a cult. We're almost certainly going to get to the end of the first part in this stream, and to be honest, actually, no, I don't even need to say that. So I just say that. So let's jump in. There we go. Yeah, basically, I'm hoping to record for, well, to get through. I'm hoping we'll get to the end of part one and even get into part two with this video. So, with that said, I mean, let's strike while the iron is ready to be watched. And hi, Catherine. Oh, you know what? I was actually considering also doing the, what's it called? Like setting up banned words to avoid that person. But honestly, at this point, whatever, we'll deal with it later. Wait, let me see if it's easy to do actually. Banning words / phrases in YouTube live chat. Let's see if this. I'm gonna have to watch this video real quick. Okay.
Hi, this video is about how to block or blacklist certain words on YouTube. Did you know that you can filter out certain words or phrases that you feel are inappropriate for the comment section? In my previous video, I spoke about how to block specific subscribers from your YouTube channel. Click the info card above or click the link in the description below to watch that video. Another option is to use the blacklist feature on your YouTube channel. You can add a list of words or phrases you want to remove.
Well, I see it needs to be specific for live. All right, okay, so we go into YouTube Studio. You're going to do a blacklist, apparently. My favorite kind of list. All right. So how do we... Settings, community. All right, settings, community. Okay. And I've got some, I'm actually surprised at how many people are, whatever though. Oh, that's interesting. Blocked words, okay. So, what's the name of this person? It's Naked HD. Let's see if this works. So that is a word. Save. Let's see if that works. I don't necessarily expect it will, but if it works, it's good. Okay, anyway, so we're going to jump into it now because I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff.
For not only catering to cis women.
Wait.
Caelan launched an extra service, an online platform where survivors could seek help in crisis, like one-on-one with a rape crisis counselor. Notable gender-critical cultist and anti-trans activist Allison Bailey attacked them for not only catering to cis women.
I would like to say that it's funny that we're getting now like gender-critical cultist as if it's been remotely evidenced that the gender-critical movement is a cult, which of course it hasn't. But the thing is, what I want to stress here is that first of all, I think I saw some people commenting saying that this was a lie, and you know that like basically, well, I don't know. The main issue, as I see it, is that ultimately the point being made here is not that there shouldn't be any services for any victim of sexual violence, but the point being made is that these were services that were fought for by feminists, and therefore it's a bit not okay to just suddenly redirect the focus of those services away from women specifically, because women were the ones who fought for this. I don't think that the problem is, in order for this to be a substantial point, you would have to show that Allison Bailey is against the idea of men and, you know, kind of men's liberation movements fighting for men to have access to services for sexual violence. And I imagine that's not the case. I imagine what Allison Bailey is objecting to, more so, if anything, is the fact that these are services that feminists fought for, which are now feminists are being expected, women are being expected to take their, to accept what they fought for being divided up and their resources being shared out to accommodate other people. And it's like, why should women who have been so historically oppressed be expected to share out the resources that they fought so hard for? And I think that's a very legitimate objection for feminists to have, and it would be a very legitimate objection for any movement that has fought for their rights to have. You know, I think it would be as legitimate for if a black kind of liberation group fought for particular services for black people, and then suddenly those services were being opened up to people of all races, I would, if a black liberation person objected to that, I wouldn't assume that they're saying, oh, nobody should have access to these services. Rather, they're saying, hold on a minute, why do we have to share out the resources that we fought so hard for? And that is a very legitimate objection. And I'm not saying you can't debate it. I'm not saying that you can't say, well, maybe they should share out. But I'm saying it's not unreasonable for them to actually have some objections.
But also because she doesn't believe that lesbians raped by their lesbian partners are real rape victims. That young boys raped by their teachers or female family members are real rape victims.
It's important to understand this literally does not matter. It's just people being technical about the meaning of that word under British law. And you can say, oh, they shouldn't care. But the thing is, that's all they're doing. And I don't see what the problem is. It's about that one specific word. They're not denying that these people aren't victims of sexual assault. They're just saying, well, this word has a very specific meaning in British law. So let's use that word appropriately. And you can disagree, but it's worth noting, you are the person who previously said that if the law defines something to be conversion therapy, then it is conversion therapy. So if you're going to say that people shouldn't appeal to what the law says something is, then you are something of a hypocrite. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I really do not care if somebody believes that anything I might experience is classified. But the thing is, I really do not care whether or not somebody believes perhaps a negative thing that I've experienced should be technically classified under a particular word or phrase. What I care about is, do they recognize that something bad happened and are they against that bad thing? So you would have to show here that there are apparently perhaps gender-critical feminists who think that men being sexually assaulted is not a bad thing. Not just that there are gender-critical feminists who are perhaps a little bit, particular about the specific, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to get there. Pedantic. There we go. It's not enough to just show that there are gender-critical feminists who are a bit pedantic about the technical legal definition of words. That really, you can say, oh, well, nobody likes a pedant. That's a bit annoying. But you can't say that this means they're evil, horrible people. It's not really a moral issue. I wouldn't say pedantry is usually a particularly moral issue. So really, you're just talking about something irrelevant, frankly.
In English law,
Hi, Dladlick.
only men rape. It requires a penis.
Only women penetrated by a man with a penis are rape victims, and services should be tailored only to them.
Nobody said that services should be tailored. Genuinely, are there any examples of gender-critical people, gender-critical feminists saying that only services should be tailored towards women who have been, penetrated by a penis? I've not seen it. You haven't evidenced that claim, so it's a bit wild. To be honest, seeing as you haven't evidenced that claim coming from gender-critical people, I guess I can only assume that you're just saying it yourself, because you haven't evidenced any gender-critical person saying that.
In Western society, lesbian intimacy and relationships are undermined and invalidated at every turn. Their love is played off as fleeting and confused. Their sex is seen as something existing only for the male gaze, not an expression of genuine attraction and intimacy. It's fucking disgusting. And definitely, lesbians are not viewed as having as valid of a relationship as straight people, sexually or emotionally. And these sentiments inform the laws created around rape and sexual assault. The reason why rape is classified in the UK as penetration with a penis is because that's what sex was to them. It is based on a heterosexist, misogynistic, and homophobic idea of sex. And when you uphold the laws informed by these bigotries, you uphold the bigotry itself as law. How would an ideology that believes lesbians can't be raped by their partner ever benefit women? How is that fighting for women and gays?
Well, look, here's the thing. You're saying that you can't uphold those laws. Look, all they're saying, all these people seem to be saying, is that that is the technical definition in the UK. Again, what you would have to show here is it's not enough to just show people being, like I say, pedantic about the technical legal definition of a word. you would have to show these people believe that that is the best way to define that word, and you haven't shown that. Like, this is the problem. You're not actually talking about anything remotely substantial here. You're getting very angry about it, but you haven't actually made a substantial point yet.
They throw lesbians under the bus in a second if they can hurt some trans people in the process. Even the lesbians like Allison do it. But she's the kind of lesbian that works for a homophobic anti-trans lobby group, so...
I do want to say, by the way, that the Caelan tweeted out like, "Oh, I'm going to be doing a video on the LGB Alliance. So if anyone wants to tell me what they know about the LGB Alliance, then let me know." And I'm 100% convinced that Caelan like doesn't actually have, like, Caelan didn't start with a legitimate objection to the LGB Alliance and then work from there. Rather, it's like, oh, I want to make a video about the LGB Alliance. Let me just try and crowdsource a load of like arbitrary kind of nonsense, which I can just kind of cobble together into a video that seems remotely coherent. It's just nonsense.
Lowered expectation. So I responded because, as someone who is a survivor of rape and someone who will not see people just invalidate lesbian survivors, I kind of had to. I never should respond to anyone on Twitter because it's not good for me, but here we are. So I responded, calling her out for the holes in her worldview. You know, the big glaring holes that when...
I can literally see, like, just, again, I'm not reading, like, I can't be bothered to read all of these screenshots in full. If there is a specific point you want to make about what's in the screenshots, you should draw specific attention to it, because I'm not going to pause and read every single screenshot. But just right now, I can read Alison Bailey say, "It's English law." By the way, Alison Bailey is a lawyer, right? Or a barrister. I don't know if there's any difference between the two. But yeah, like, so literally that's it. It's just a statement, it's English law. So again, all you're dealing with here is somebody who is being pedantic about, and again, like, I'm saying pedantic because what I mean is they're being very particular about the technical definition of this term under English law. And you can not like that. You can disagree with that, but you can't say it's some kind of morally abhorrent thing, because it's really not.
Follow through logically are entirely misogynistic and used to marginalize people. To her, that was abuse. And the actions of me, one single person, standing up for lesbian survivors...
Oh my god. Oh no. Like, it's so self-aggrandizing. And I was there, standing up for lesbian survivors. To a lesbian, by the way. Like, can we not forget that? This is a dude saying, "Hey, I was there." Maybe I shouldn't say dude. I really want to, but, like, I don't know. I'm being inconsistent, because usually if someone says they're non-binary, I don't refer to them by pronouns. I don't know, or like as a dude. Fine, we're gonna, we'll for the, I'm happy to have it in here, but for the video that kind of gets edited, I might just say, what we have here is this person saying to a lesbian, "Oh, I'm there." Well, actually, maybe it's not. It's not. I weren't saying that. Yeah, let's get this right. Okay, if we're gonna do this, what you have here is this person saying about a conversation that they had with a lesbian, "Oh, I was there standing up for the lesbians." Like, this is, how like people meme Graham Linehan for being like king of the lesbians. I've seen people say that, and whatever. I don't really care about it. But this is literally like this is that. I genuinely can't believe it. Like, just the self-aggrandizing, literally with reference to a conversation you had with a lesbian. You were talking to a lesbian, and you're there like, "And I was there standing up for the lesbians against this lesbian." Ugh.
Is enough for her to think less of all people like me.
You can drop into my mentions if you like, spouting abuse, but you do your cause no favours, and you give gay and non-binary men a bad name.
Somehow, my personal opinions are enough for her to think less of every single gay man and non-binary man. You know what that's called? Discrimination, stereotyping, homophobia. And the whole reason...
I mean, look, I'm not even going to like kind of engage with that properly. Like, it's not going in the edited thing. But it's obviously like there's a difference between saying you are letting down, the groups you represent with your behavior, versus saying, "Well, because of your behavior, I'm therefore going to prejudge every single person." Like, that's kind of ridiculous. Like, I would say that if one man acts like shitty, you can say, "Oh, you're giving men a bad name. And I wouldn't say that's like prejudice. I would just say, yeah, like they are kind of letting down the side there.
Gender critical people
And yeah, okay, yeah. Just for record, Elliot, yeah, this person is saying that being gender critical is a cult. They've not really tried to evidence it at all. And yeah, they're just talking nonsense.
do things like attack rape crisis centers is to fuel anxiety. And honestly, when you put all their conspiracy theories together, you can see how terrifying and disgusting their imagined reality must be. Like, okay, children are being butchered, mutilated, groomed by the thousands a year. Women's change rooms.
I use some sort of INTJ. I've done the test, and yes, INTJ is exactly what I am. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I did it because I had a girlfriend at one point who was like obsessed with the Myers-Briggs thing. She insisted that I do it. I said I'm an INTJ. She didn't immediately break up with me, so I don't know. Like, is that a good thing? I'm not sure.
Rooms are being filled with disgusting, hairy rapists, pedophiles, and perverts. There's an epidemic of rapes being committed against women by men in dresses. And if you go to get help, everyone at the Rape Crisis Center is a rapist in a dress too, who will call you a bigot for not wanting to be raped. You can't even say the word woman anymore without a trans activist trying to kill you and your dog with a chocolate bar. That is how they talk about trans people in private.
Hold a minute. Do we just get... I'm pretty sure we just got this person, Caelan, making fun of physical assault. Someone just threw a Whisper chocolate bar into my garden along with a lemon. Okay. So, I mean, obviously you could say, so basically, I mean, I don't know, based on that tweet, I'm not sure if this was a example of... blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure based on that tweet if this was a targeted attack, but obviously, I mean, throwing things at people is physical abuse. Like, whether you're in, an intimate relationship, in which case I guess it's domestic abuse, if you're throwing things at your partner. And obviously, again, I'm talking about in an aggressive way. In this case, of course, I guess it wasn't being thrown directly at her, it was being thrown in the garden where it could have potentially killed a dog. But yeah, whatever. I mean, I don't know, it just seems weird to make light of that.
Because that is how they see trans people. And trans people know this in ways cis people, most of them, will never. So when trans people see the phrase adult human female plastered across some boomer cringelord walking down the street, they understand it's not just a dictionary definition. It is a phrase that has been widely adopted by gender-critical anti-trans activists and held up as a rallying cry by people who carry all the anti-trans conspiratorial beliefs we've discussed. Most of the time, if they show anything to represent a trans woman, they pick an image of someone who appears to be male despite the superficial things that they're wearing. This is to enforce the idea that trans women are men in a dress, men in a wig, men in lipstick.
Okay, let's be clear. What it is it's to get across that this is what you're advocating for. Because a lot of people are very deeply sexist. And a lot of people, I think, have the intuitive idea that if somebody looks convincing as a stereotypical woman, then, oh, that's fine, they're a woman, it doesn't matter. So, and that is, of course, a very sexist way of thinking, because you're assuming that because of stereotypes, that legitimizes somebody being a woman. But the point is, people are raised, we live in a very sexist, patriarchal society, so many people out there will say, oh, that person looks like a woman, it's fine. So the way you break through that sexism is and the way you make people realize, no, what you're advocating for, it doesn't matter how convincing they look, you're still talking about men in women's spaces, is you have to find something which people will recognize as a man. The point is, gender-critical feminists don't care how convincing a trans-identified male looks. Gender-critical feminists aren't going to be like, oh, well, don't worry, they've had the surgery and the facial feminization surgery, so it's fine. No, they don't care. But the point is that if they post examples of people who do look somewhat convincing, then a lot of people who are sexist, who do have that idea of, well, if they look like a woman, it's fine. If they look stereotypically like a woman, it's fine, in order to break through and get through to those people. So that's the reason why it's done. It's not because there aren't, trans-identified males who do look at least somewhat convincing as biological females, but rather because those individuals are playing playing into the sexist patriarchal idea of, well, I look like a woman, therefore I must be a woman, because that's what a woman is, right? A woman's somebody who wears a dress and has long hair and wears makeup and has a particular facial structure and all that kind of stuff. Like that's basically what they're doing, and obviously, therefore, gender critical feminists would be against that, but patriarchal society would generally not be. Anyway, I do have long hair.
And not, fully realized people who live as women every day, who do not take off their womanhood at the end of the night the way someone can take off a dress, a wig, or lipstick.
Okay, but the thing is, this is pointless because you haven't defined woman. So you're not making a point. You're saying like, oh, they don't take off their womanhood. Okay, but like, as far as I'm concerned, you literally might as well be saying anything else. You might be saying, they don't take off their blah, 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 because you haven't defined womanhood. And therefore, you haven't defined woman, and you haven't, by extension, defined womanhood. So you're not making a point. When you make like confident, assertive statements about words which you haven't defined, you're not actually saying anything at all. If you haven't defined woman, then it's meaningless to say they don't take off their womanhood. Okay, I don't even know what you think you mean by that statement.
But obviously, trans women can look like literally any kind of person, like all people can. So when confronted with a trans woman who looks like a woman in a dress, wig, and lipstick, they have to change up the party line just a bit.
Well, look, again, I want to stress, it's consistent. The point is, if it's a woman in a dress, if it's somebody who looks like a woman in a dress, then what I would say is, yes, that is what I've always objected to. The idea of any biological male entering women's spaces, the idea of any biological male declaring themselves to be a woman when there is no good argument to regard them as such. The only reason why I would ever appeal to examples of trans-identified males who do not look more typically like women is to break through to the logic of people who disagree with me on my beliefs about how stereotypical femininity should have nothing to do with womanhood.
Attention, Tommy Dorfman. If you're watching this, skip to the next chapter. Don't you watch this, Miss Dorfman. Or, I don't know, content warning if you're her. Tommy Dorfman is an actress that recently came out as a trans woman after having identified as non-binary for years. When she came out, there were a flurry of articles about it, and many of them were posted and reposted ad frickin' nauseum to every gender critical group I was in. And they continue to be.
Tommy Dorfman looks like a man in woman face, and it pisses me off.
Trying to look like a sex toy.
Because this is how women dress? In completely see-through floor-length dresses. It's like a sex-up Norman Bates. Very strange. Just be an effeminate gay man, dude.
Spitting image.
Jesus, he looks ridiculous trying to turn himself into a pornified version of femininity.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop here. What you're getting here is, it's kind of meaningless because you're just getting a presentation of the fact that gender critical feminists say stuff like this. I don't know, I'm not sure if there's anything I can say. Just here you go. For the record, this is what's being presented. I don't think there's anything wrong with what's been said, so therefore I can't. I'm going to have to wait for Caelan Conrad to point out why there's something apparently wrong with this.
And without the haze and the Photoshop, just another man in a dress that women wouldn't be caught dead in.
Tommy Dorfman has a husband, which to gender critical people makes her a homosexual male. Mm-hmm. So she should have some support, right? Given that she's one of the classes they're looking to protect.
That's a really dumb thing to say, because obviously the point is, yes, they do have, this individual does have support as a homosexual male. That's why the statement literally was, just be a homosexual male, dude. That was one of the quotes that was shown. I don't know if I'm going to include it in the edit, but that was one of the quotes that was shown. So, yes, they would have support based on that. I'm interested to see how that's going to be contradicted.
But the gender critical conspiracy theory is that it's internalized homophobia that makes a gay male want to be a straight female.
But you're saying but that does not contradict. That would show exactly how they have support as a gay male. I don't understand what you're missing here. You're saying that gender critical people support gay men being gay, but they don't like the idea of gay men claiming to be women. And then what you've shown is exactly evidence of that. And I'm left wondering, what's the problem?
For example, this active group member admits that Tommy obviously wasn't a shamed gay man who became a woman as a form of conversion therapy. She knew that Tommy transitioning just did not align with the worldview of gender-critical ideology.
This makes no sense. A man who was comfortable enough with his homosexuality to get married to a man suddenly thinks he's trans. I think his friends convinced him he's trans.
So how does...
Okay, I just need to address that. So apparently, this idea makes no sense. As if, like, it's impossible for somebody to have delayed effects from internalized homophobia. Like, that's basically my response. Like, the question is, well, how is it that this person was comfortable and happy living as a gay man and then later on changed? And it's like, well, because internalized oppression can have delayed responses. It's not just like a quick, immediate thing. So that's really all there is to say on that.
How do they parse that for an openly queer, married, non-binary person when you have no evidence showing shame and mounds of evidence showing pride? It always takes a lot to be out as queer, but that's only exacerbated when you're a public-facing figure. Well, the easiest way to satisfy their cognitive dissonance is just to rewrite trans people's history.
I feel bad for Tommy. Internalized homophobia is powerful, and trans ideology has given many who suffer from it a supposed out. He will never find a fulfilling romantic relationship again. There may be some men who will sleep with him, chasers, or guys who will stick it in anyone, but...
Okay, I need to say this just because it's like an aside and this isn't going in the main thing, but this entire thing was supposed to be about somebody who looks like a woman in a dress, and so far we haven't actually seen an example of this person. What's their name? Is it... Who's this person? Tommy... Oh, Tommy Dorfman. Because the claim was, well, what about somebody who does look like a woman in a dress? Right, okay. So I've looked them up. And I think we're all clear on the fact this person does not look like a woman in a dress at all. Oh no. Like, because I was kind of thinking, like, hold on a minute. The entire, like, premise of this thing was supposed to be like, well, how do they react when there's somebody who looks like a woman in a dress? And then you get this whole thing about Tommy Dorfman, and I'm like, wait a minute, we haven't actually seen a picture of Tommy Dorfman yet. Like, there hasn't been, like, you would think it would be like, what about somebody who looks like a woman in a dress? And like, the crazy thing is, though, like, I mean, there are trans-identified males who look more convincing than this. I mean, heck, I would say ContraPoints looks more... I mean, maybe obviously, there's always the fact there's like makeup and, kind of visual effects, but like, there are plenty, like, I can just think of trans-identified males that even I've responded to on this channel who look more convincingly female than this person. So it's just a bit weird that, like, this is the person who's been chosen, but whatever. It shows how, like, disorganized the video is, because it's like you will constantly get segues that don't actually lead to what they're supposed to be talking about. Because this could have just been, like, introduced as like, oh, they say things about internalized homosexuality, and just spoken about that. Oh, sorry, internalized homophobia. They could have just, like, Caelan could have just been like, oh, they talk about internalized, but instead you have this, like, weird, bizarre segue of, like, well, this is how they react to people who do look convincingly like women. There's non-Tims that look more female. That is a good point. I mean, heck, like, when I've shaved, like, genuinely, when I've shaved, do I look much less female than this person? Sorry, do I look... Is that right? Yeah. I was just trying to think what I was saying, like, I should have been much more female. No, yeah, when I've, like, if I've, like, just recently shaved... I mean, I guess there's... The eyebrows are plucked, so that may be... But, like, really, it's just not much. Goodness me. Oh, dear.
Love, no longer in the cards for Tommy.
Within the span of 3 weeks, she pretended entirely that incongruence causing her to question her narrative just didn't exist, and despite knowing it wasn't true, blamed Tommy's transition on internalized homophobia anyway.
No, no, no. You haven't evidenced that there is any knowledge that this is not true. There is no reason to doubt that this was internalized homophobia. The only evidence given that it was not internalized homophobia is that this person was somewhat happy, or seemingly happy, living as a gay male for some amount of time, or a gay man for some amount of time. But again, that's not relevant at all because, of course, internalized systemic oppression can have delayed effects. So it's not, by no means is it even, it doesn't really function at all as a refutation of the idea that internalized homophobia is responsible. And it certainly doesn't mean we can say that we know internalized homophobia wasn't anything to do with it.
Anyways, they use the self-hatred that the straight world pushes onto gay people as a weapon to shame trans people. They tell the story in two extremes that sound very similar but look very different. Trans women are either the gross pervy man that looks like a man dressed as a woman from fetish porn, or the gross pervy man that looks like a woman but is still dressed as a woman from fetish porn. They post from subreddits and Twitter.
The self-contradiction, literally the whole thing you were just saying is that, like, literally about, what, like 5 minutes ago, we got the whole thing about the whole point of this section was supposed to be that the way they treat biological males who look like men is different from the way they treat biological males who look like women. And yet here, you've just said that actually they treat them the same. So, what are you doing, Caelan? You're contradicting yourself. I don't get it. You're literally just like, you're contradicting the entire point of what you just said earlier. I don't understand it. I mean, I remember at the beginning, like right at the beginning of the video, you were like, oh, everything just poured out. Yeah, okay, fine. It's all right to have everything pour out, but that's not a reason to avoid going back and making sure you get more than the first draft, where you don't find yourself contradicting your own point within the space of like 5 minutes.
Twitter accounts of cross-dressing men, or from trans sex workers' Twitter accounts, as if these are an accurate representation of what all trans women are. It's the same tactic homophobes use when they constantly post sexy images of men in bondage gear as an argument that, like, gay men shouldn't be teachers. As if the image of a single gay man in bondage gear is proof of anything but that he wore bondage gear for a photo.
Okay, this is not going in the edited version, but I just want to say, like, I'm pretty sure that the main objection is men in bondage gear when there is a young child literally within the same shot. Like, I've seen people post men in bondage gear with young children in the same shot. I've never seen somebody say, oh, because this guy wore bondage gear once, that means he should never be allowed around children. But I have seen people say, oh, because this guy is in bondage gear while he's literally in the presence of children, that is a problem.
And when constructing their image of what trans people are, there's never any room for them to be like an actual realized person. They are disgusting, sexual, nothing but anatomy. By being trans, they are tainting the purity of the sex binary that must be maintained to assert gender-critical power, privilege, and ideology. Because if...
Wait.
Anatomy. By being trans, they are tainting the purity of the sex binary that must be maintained to assert gender-critical power, privilege...
No. Okay, first of all, gender-critical power, privilege... Dude, you're talking about women. Like... What happened where these people just got so far removed from the reality of feminism that they're saying like, oh yeah, women, they have all the power and privilege. But also, okay, on the subject of the purity of the sex binary, first of all, if we're talking about some kind of moral purity, there is no moral purity to the sex binary. It's literally an entirely uninteresting, objective fact of reality. I say uninteresting, I mean, sure, it's interesting if you're like a biologist, but it's really, you know, like certainly it's not morally or like emotionally interesting. It's just like, oh yeah, biological males and biological females exist. Like if somebody, I don't know, disagrees with that, then I'm not gonna be like, oh, you're tainting the purity. No, I'm just gonna be like, okay, why do you think it doesn't exist? And I suspect you're wrong. Like that's it. It's not. So if therefore we're talking about, you know, because obviously it's not a moral thing, so maybe it's saying tainting the purity in terms of like its intellectual veracity, but it's still undeniably true. Like somebody being trans doesn't make the sex binary any less true. So I literally have no idea what you're saying. This would have been a better point if it was being made about intersex people. Like again, I hate to do it where I like give these people advice on how to make better videos. But if you wanted to make this point, you should have like if you're gonna make stuff up anyway, you might as well have made up that gender critical people hate intersex people because and obviously I realize intersex is obviously the proper term would be more differences of sexual development, but I'm just saying the type of terminology that I imagine Caelan would use. So yeah, you could have said that gender critical people hate people with differences of sexual development because it ruins the sex binary, and that would have made more sense than saying that they hate trans people. Because it's like, look, I assure you that you saying you're non-binary does not in any way ruin the sex binary. The sex binary is still very obvious and unaffected by your nonsense claims.
Religion ideology.
It's like the whole thing about, Neil deGrasse Tyson says about science, right? Like the good thing about science, I don't know if it's Neil deGrasse Tyson or if it's Bill Nye. It's one of the like pop scientist people. The good thing about science is it's true whether or not you believe in it. Like that's it. It doesn't matter. Like you can say that you're not part of the sex binary, but you still are.
Because if the world isn't split up into two classes, men and women, then gender critical ideology is entirely based on a falsity. They intersperse these photo posts with in-group literature posted on blogs and podcasts that stoke fear and out-group aggression. They inundate themselves with a constant
Inundate, not inundate. They inundate.
stream of terror and then let it boil into a dehumanizing rage, recycling the same old articles, the same old stories, the same old myths, a rapist in a dress, a penis, a
I mean, there is like a massive irony to the fact that this whole thing's supposed to be like gender critical people lie about what trans people are really like in order to justify their ideology or something like that. And it's just like that's what you're doing. You're making up this like straw man of a gender critical person in your head. I mean, it's not a straw man, frankly, it's a scarecrow. Something for you to be scared of and be like, oh god. But like it's just in reality, literally, it's we're just there. Like, can you evidence your claims, please? Like that's it. You just got somebody going, I'm non-binary. I'm not a man or a woman. And then you just got a bunch of other people being like, well, that doesn't really make much sense. I mean, how are you understanding the terms man and woman such that you would say you're neither one nor the other? I mean, surely it makes sense to say that a man is a biological male and a woman's a biological female. Like, that would just seem to be a way of defining the terms that work. So I'd be interested to know what way you're defining the terms and how this identity of yours as non-binary fits into that. And then Caelan's just like, and then they started imagining I was horrible and disgusting, and I must have just been destroying the purity of their whole thing. And we're just there like, can you maybe make what you're saying make sense, please, so we can try and understand it? Please, that would be nice. No? Okay, you're just gonna say that we're all horrible, evil, scary people who like wanna, I don't know, like destroy all the trans people so we can have all our all our privilege. Reality like reality privilege, reality acknowledging privilege. Yeah, it is probably the best kind of privilege.
weapon, a weapon that will be used against women and children unless somebody does something.
Men, for once, I'm talking to you.
Oh wait, you know what? I actually want to put some pasta on for like 10 minutes. I'm going to turn this off, but I'm not going to switch or anything like that. I'm just going to put it on, then I'm going to be back, and I'm going to be up here for another 10 minutes, then I'm going to get my pasta, because like, basically I'm recording earlier, you probably noticed, and that's partially to do with the fact that I think I've already mentioned, I've got a wedding this weekend, and I'm trying to like make sure that I've got this done, and then updating whatever. It won't be long, so don't go anywhere. sorry, I went downstairs because I was downstairs slightly longer than I expected because I got down there and then my papa was like, "Oh, you making pasta? There are some mushrooms that need using up." So I said, that. I mean, I said yes. Sorry, that was no. I said that I would cook the mushrooms. So I needs to give them a bit of a head start on high heat because that's how you do mushrooms. And then now I'm giving it another about 10 minutes. But so yeah, I'm only gonna be here for a little while, but then I'm gonna whatever. I want to get through some of it.
I'm talking about you dads who maybe carry, maybe you don't. Maybe you consider yourself a protector of women. Maybe you're that sort of man. But it's about time that you started using women's toilets and saying that you identify as a woman if stopped. And there's going to be no excuses. And you either care about the women and girls in your life or you don't. But you are going to start inserting yourselves into spaces that are specifically for women and girls.
So basically, I mean, let's be clear on what this seems to be from a first glance. This seems to be accelerationist, right? Like, which is actually a very legitimate point. And I've often thought to myself, like, would it make sense for me to start calling myself a woman and get access to loads of, like specific kind of things reserved for women with the logic of like, well, that would help people realize this is nonsense. Obviously, I've always thought, well, I'd never actually do it, but it's kind of, it is a legitimate point of view that actually the accelerationist approach of getting as many people who see that this is nonsense to start intentionally doing the most absurd things to make it clear how nonsense this is so that people realize the problem, so that it changes. That is a legitimate point of view to have. And I obviously I wouldn't do it. And, I think it's kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't really agree with Posey Parker suggesting people do it, but it seems to me to be accelerationism, which is a legitimate strategy in any kind of political discourse. To, like I say, make things, so the logic of accelerationism, for anybody who isn't clear, is you basically make things intentionally worse in order to provoke people to realize the problem. Because sometimes when things are just trundling along, hello Lisa, when things are just trundling along and they're pretty bad but not so bad, it's just keeping things ticking over, people won't see anything wrong, they won't have a problem. But as soon as you make things even worse intentionally, that's when you can actually achieve results. And yeah, I'm seeing some people say they don't agree with it in the comments, and yeah, I personally think it's a very risky move. And obviously, again, there's also the fact of, can you morally kind of justify doing it, even, do the ends justify the means? But it's definitely something, and I kind of, like, my attitude, honestly, when, like, somebody asks me to kind of be green and, like, be environmentally conscious, I often have an accelerationist attitude of, like, I genuinely don't care. The faster we use up all of the energy, the sooner we're going to have to switch to renewables. Like, basically, I'm not going to kind of just do my part to keep things trundling along so we can, I don't know, hold off the planet warming by a few extra decades, or delay the complete collapse of society due to not having any fossil fuels for a few extra years. No, like I would rather just like I say, be an accelerationist, just make things worse so that people realize, oh wait, actually we can't just keep trundling along and just accepting the crap standard. We have to actually do something, and that seems to be what is being hinted at here.
You're going to do it when you go to your kids' school, and that you're going to go and use the toilet and ask where the girls' toilets are. And that what some of these trans activists do, these autogynephiles, is they talk about being scared, being vulnerable, and it's all to do with their fantasy, and it's all part of their pattern of arousal. So those men, they don't really feel scared. They just imagine that how a woman might feel, and then they sort of wear it in a sort of porny, pervy, constant state of arousal. It's not actually a genuine fear. It's an enjoyment of what fear might feel like if you're a woman, just by the very nature. If you don't think you should cut girls' breasts off at age 13 in the United States of America. You are transphobic. If you don't think it's all right that we are encouraging autistic teenagers to transition, you are transphobic. You're already there. You might as well, what is it? You might as well be be hung for a sheep than a lamb. You might as well.
Okay, I don't know why it included that bit where Posey just like stumbled over her words. Like I'm not sure why that was worth including. But yeah, basically, I think she was trying to say like you might as well be lambs for this. I don't know what she was trying to say, to be honest. But here's the thing. Like I do remember somebody was like, "Oh, you should watch this series because it will expose how terrible Posey Parker is." And I was like, okay, I'll be interested because I've got no reason to refuse to condemn Posey Parker if she says something that I think is objectionable. I mean, really, there's a question of would I individually condemn a specific thing she said versus would I condemn her overall as a person? Because, of course, you can condemn something that somebody specifically said, but you don't necessarily have to condemn them as a person. But anyway, like, so I was kind of, I was talking to someone like, how can you support a movement that has Posey Parker in it? And I was like, well, I don't really know much about like what Posey Parker said that's apparently horrendous. I'll say based on that, I mean, obviously we had the kind of accelerationist thing, which again, I personally wouldn't agree with, but I would say it's just a difference in kind of strategy. And then apart from that, you had a few other claims, which I didn't even respond to because I think those claims are completely legitimate. And yeah, there's no, I don't see any issue with those claims. So thus far, I've still got no reason to want to condemn Posey Parker.
You know, in films, when they show someone being brainwashed, they're sitting there in front of a screen and they're just being fed propaganda.
Fred. They're just being Fred. They're just being Fred.
Someone being brainwashed, they're sitting there in front of a screen and they're just being fed proper.
When you're just being Fred. That's... Why am I laughing so much? I think I need to eat some food. Fred. Yeah, Fred the YouTuber. I was thinking like Fred Propaganda might be his full name. Oh no. It's Mr. Propaganda. Oh please, just call me Fred. Fred is my father's name. Why do I find that so funny?
Propaganda with their eyes open. That's what's happening to these people, except they come back willingly. They are addicted to this hate. They need it. They revel in it. They go through it themselves, staring at their little fucking phone. Why?
I like how this is basically just taking a very common observation about society in general and just specifically acting as if it only applies to gender critical people. Like this idea of people being addicted to the strong emotions that they can get from trans identity. Sorry. This idea of people being addicted to these strong emotions that they can get from having a smartphone all the time. They can just look at all the stuff that's going to make them angry or excited. Like that idea of basically we as a society are no longer, moved by the mild kind of thrills offered by like just the natural world. And instead we have to get all of like the biggest stimulation we can. Obviously, I mean, there is a particular industry that massively appeals to men and massively exploits women that is relevant here, but it applies to, I think, just in general, the internet. This idea of you can get all of these new, like, thrills, everything's incredible, look at all this stuff. And again, a lot of the time might even be negative emotions because people, don't, people often find, I mean, obviously, for example, fear, like horror movies and things like that, like people can find negative emotions cathartic in some ways, but the point is, we're obsessed with just finding like the even bigger anger, even more embarrassment. I remember when I first discovered the cringe subreddit, it was just like even just the most awkward thing would make me cringe. But now it's like I need the most awkward thing I can in order to find the cringe. I need to seek out whatever cringe I can at any opportunity. And that's the thing. Like maybe if I didn't have the internet, I would have just back in the Middle Ages, I'm sure that two people accidentally bumping into each other was enough cringe to have them going for the entire month. But, we as a society have become much more desensitized to that kind of stuff now. The point is, this is just an observation about society in general. It's not like a unique take. Everyone knows this. The only thing that seems to be unique here is Caelan acting as if this applies uniquely and consistently to gender critical people. And that's when you realize this is just a very dumb take. Basically, Caelan has observed some people on the internet doing what a lot of people on the internet do, like a very well observed phenomenon on the internet, and has just decided to be like, well, that must be because they're gender critical and part of this cult. Okay, so how do you explain all of the other examples online of people engaging in this exact same kind of behavior where they always, like literally there's the entire subreddit on Reddit, like the Rage subreddit. I've been on it a few times. Eventually I decided I wasn't really into it. But like it literally just, it exists to show you things that will make you super angry. And the funny thing is, guess what? It's not filled with gender critical people. It's not like every single post is about how trans identified people are annoying. It's just about any old anger inducing thing. Because, like I say, people actually do, enjoy that kind of stuff. But that's the point. This isn't about gender critical people. You're just making a very obvious observation about society and acting as if you're exposing the gender criticals. I'm actually going to have to go check on my pasta. Sorry. It's just, this is what happens. Part of it is like, I don't know, I'm very temperamental with my food. Like, I'll go from being so full that I literally feel like I won't need to eat for like hours to suddenly feeling so starving that I'm like about to die. It's all over the place. I don't know. Maybe it's a problem. I'm not sure though. Someone's probably going to comment and say, that's really bad. That shows you have something. Hello, everybody. On this episode of Mike Bang, we are having pasta. It is made up of pasta and sauce. I'll be more specific. The sauce is plum tomatoes, with some fennel, some chili, some garlic, some onions, some red peppers, some basil, and also some courgettes or zucchini, if you're wrong. I cooked that earlier for a previous meal. What even was that meal? What I had? Courgette. What did I have courgette with? It would have been something good. Oh, whatever. I had courgette. I know what it was. It was just like chicken and rice with courgette. And I was like, I better use that up. And that should be everything. Also olive oil, except bougie.
There is purpose in the anger that comes from disgust. It creates a feedback loop. The more you look, the more disgusted you become, and every new post reminds you how right you were to be disgusted by the last one. And the more you feel like this big, horrible event is taking place, and you're one of the few intelligent people in the know, you're going to help stop this filth from spreading. And the more disgusted you become, the less you see trans people as anything more than simply existing to be the object of your disgust. They exist as a receptacle for disgust, and its byproduct, hate. Trans people's profiles often become nothing but a place to mine personal information to rage over, an unconsenting outlet for their hatred. I want to highlight something particular here. The obsession with trans women and trans people has gotten to the point where these people are willingly traumatizing themselves over and over. They don't think of anything else. They don't do anything else. They don't even really fight for women, only against trans people. They see threats everywhere, from JanSport bags.
They do fight for women, and also we do other things. Like, again, you get this, it's the hypocrisy, right? There is a refusal to understand gender-critical people as actual, fully formed human beings. Instead, they're just reduced to, just scary, evil people who hate you. The hypocrisy just, wow.
To cereal boxes. What's up with these backpacks at Target? Trans. Mass indoctrination of children.
Together or to get her.
That's funny.
Together or to get her. I have not stopped laughing since I read this like 4 months ago. Together.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it was intended originally as a joke. Actually, so, okay. We just took a risk on some floor pasta.
Oh fuck, I used to be a smoker. Don't.
See, I do think, like, this inability to recognize a comment that is clearly meant facetiously directly comes from the fact that this person, like I say, has refused to understand that gender-critical people aren't basically what they're being presented as in this video. Like, no, they do make funny jokes. You seem to be confused. You're like, haha, isn't it funny? It said together. It's like, yeah, it was supposed to be a joke.
Judge me. They see threats everywhere. It becomes an obsession, and it gets to the point that it poisons their mind. Eventually, they start to be disgusted by every gender non-conforming person. Once proud straight women allies rescind their gracious acceptance of even the effeminate gays they once carried around with them as accessories. It goes without saying that gender-critical anti-trans activists are open about their fears of trans people, as those fears add legitimacy to their defense of being innocent victims when they are called out for their dog whistles. They're not as open about the extent of their disgust of trans people. Although anyone who did a little digging could find it, if they knew what to look for.
Oh, and mushrooms.
I wonder what the public response would be if instead anti-trans activists couldn't hide behind dog whistles. If they just publicly said what they meant and why they believed it. If instead of this, we had this. In public, the target of gender-critical activists is often trans women. Even when discussing all trans people, they tend to...
I made a mistake. I need to go get a spoon. I'm sorry. Like, I made a horrible mistake with the fork, with the penne. The penne? What is that from? Oh, I was thinking Forrest Gump. Jenny? If I would have used a spoon from the start, I wouldn't have had to eat that disgusting floor pasta. Oh no. I hope no one heard that.
phrase things as if trans men and non-binary people do not exist at all. Like, they'll refer to all trans people as penises or men in dresses. And usually that's because the mere existence of trans men reveals many gender-critical arguments to be baseless and...
Okay, so I'm not going to deal with that thing, but I just want to say, in a previous video, like literally last video, I said that all trans-identified people are male, and obviously that's not true. But the reason I said it is because it was specifically within the context of being scared of trans-identified people. And therefore, I was thinking, well, who is it that gender-critical feminists show concern about? It's the trans-identified males. So it's worth noting that when people like me do talk about trans-identified people as if it's only biological males, it's because in a lot of conversations, trans-identified males are the main thing that's relevant. That's really all there is to it. I did like a weird noise.
Ignorant. For example, when trans people discuss needing access to the bathroom, gender-critical people will be like, do you want men who look like this in your bathroom? Even regardless of the fact that trans women aren't men and trans women all look different, there's this. You know what? Let me show you gender-critical ideology in practice in the real world.
So it's going to be like, oh, look, there's somebody who looks like a biological male, but they're in a woman's toilet. And it's like, okay, like, here's the thing. Even granting that, the best case scenario here is you're saying, well, no matter what, there are going to be people who look like biological males in women's toilets. But, okay, whatever, fine. There's on top of that the fact that within gender-critical ideology, the people who are going to be doing this are not going to be kind of actively encouraged with this mass propaganda campaign, which is trying to turn all of the lesbians into trans men. So it's going to be less of an issue. And then on top of that, the reality is that fully, like, transitioned biological females who look like biological males are actually quite rare, whereas conversely, there are an infinite well, or practically infinite well, of men who look like biological males who could just decide one day that they're biologically female. So if this is a problem, and it's a problem potentially in both worldviews, that there could be people who look like biological males in women's spaces, you have the fact that it is far more consistently and far more readily going to be a problem in the trans identity point of view, and also the fact that in the gender critical point of view, even while the people might look like biological males and it might make some women uncomfortable, there is the fact that they're not biological males. And on top of that, let's be real here, you've also got to bear in mind that this would have to be a trans-identified female who is going to look convincingly biologically male when it comes to things which can't really be changed by surgery, like bone structure and things like that.
Hughes has responded by taking selfies in women's restrooms to show why he didn't belong in them. And the campaign, which uses the hashtag #WeJustNeedToPee, has gone viral.
Do you want men who look like this to use the women's room? Well, gender critical people do. A lot more than trans people do.
What do you mean a lot more than trans people do? That's literally the opposite to the truth.
Ignoring the femaleness of trans men when it suits them is par for the course, but they will exploit those same men's femaleness whenever it suits them, in that they will use the idea of trans men as a shield from accusations of transphobia. One frequent objection to being called trans exclusionary is that gender critical ideology pretends to include trans adult men in their feminism.
In other words, yeah, gender critical feminism includes biological females,
seeing them as adult human females. Of course, this is, again, disingenuous.
How is it disingenuous? Like, trans-identified females are 100% being included in the feminism.
I'm amazed that anyone tries this weak linguistic trick. The trans exclusionary part doesn't mean that you think all trans people aren't women. It clearly means that you think trans women aren't women, that you exclude them and their real-life experiences of misogynistic sexism from your radical feminist analysis, that you want to exclude them from having the legal rights they have today. No trans men are out there thinking, oh, well that's okay then, if you include me as a woman. But not only that, it's also not true in practice. GC people like to pretend that trans men are just confused women. Worth noting the sexist dichotomy of this compared to how trans women are all predatory men. But
it's not a sexist dichotomy. It's literally just, like, it's, I mean, I don't see how it is, because it's like, it's not a dichotomy to observe that groups raised within different, subject to different systemic oppressions will, and privileges, will behave differently, reliably. Like, yes, it's not, for example, it's not illegitimate for a feminist to talk about how women are likely to be passive. For example, that is one of the things that's very relevant when talking about the wage gap, that a lot of the time women tend to be socialized to be less assertive, which means they're less likely to ask for increased wages, whereas men are more likely to be raised to be assertive and therefore are likely to ask for wages. So that's actually a very useful way to explain why we still have an unexplained pay gap. So that's a point which starts by noticing that men and women are likely to behave differently based on how they've been socialized. It's not a sexist dichotomy by any means.
when faced with what trans men really are, they want to exclude them too.
This is evident even with a cursory glance at how gender critical ideology views trans men. Let's look at what that inclusion of trans men in gender critical feminism looks like. If you're award-winning actor Elliot Page and you're watching this, do not watch this part. Skip ahead, Elliot Page, by virtue of being trans.
Okay, so let's see how Elliot Page shows that feminists don't include trans-identified females in their feminism.
Men, they are fair game for gender critical cultists, and they do not hold back.
See, I'm assuming this is just going to be that, like, essentially because gender critical feminists criticize trans-identified females, therefore they're not including them in their feminism. But that's not true at all. Gender critical feminists will criticize huge numbers of, I mean, feminists in general should criticize women when those women are doing things which is at odds with advancing the rights of women as a collective, and there's no issue with that.
Watching her public descent into madness is bad enough. The potentially
it's wonderful.
Thousands of vulnerable people she's taking along with her makes me literally see red.
I mean, that's the first thing you get. That apparently, literally, the example of not including women in your feminism, not including biological females in your feminism, is saying some of them are mad, some of them are crazy, some of them, and of course, in this case, it's being used kind of in a hyperbolic sense, just mean buying into crazy ideas. So, I mean, that's obviously absurd. You're not excluding somebody from your feminism just by saying that they're buying into stupid ideas. It's absurd to say that means you're no longer including somebody in your feminism.
Those abs are photoshopped in. You cannot develop abs like that without intense, frequent weight training that will result in much more muscular arms. Instead, Paige appears very thin, the result of her eating disorder.
I mean, I'm not going to include all of these in the editing, but like, what is this? This is not show. Oh, goodness me.
This image disturbs me because it is very clearly not the.
You'd be surprised how many feminists think women's actions should never be critiqued. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, I'd assume most of the people who are like that are kind of the weird liberal kind of choice feminists.
Musculoskeletal form of a male. It is really creepy to look at.
She's misery. I predict a tragic end that will be ascribed to T-phobia.
And remember, being concerned about somebody's mental health potentially resulting in their death is not what you would do if you're advocating for somebody. Like, that doesn't make any sense. How is that not coming from a place of genuine concern? Like, she looks miserable. I'm concerned that she's going to, and they literally, didn't they say tragic end? Like, it's going to be a tragedy. I don't understand what the issue is here.
I will never watch anything she is in again. A real betrayal to lesbians and spewing the transition or suicide madness.
Betrayal to all women.
Honestly, is working on her next disorder, anorexia. For the love of God, get some extensive mental health therapy.
Her parents...
Sorry, I realize it's kind of... Was that somebody using the B word?
must be devastated.
I don't know. They groomed her to be a child actor. It's quite possible they are thrilled.
She's filled with shame, is self-destructive, and is an actress. She's playing a public role here of one who finds himself. I think the walls will come tumbling down around her. She's still so young.
Why am I not surprised? There's a massive overlap between TRA YouTubers and obnoxious theater kids.
And I fear for her.
I guess that's what happens when you hate yourself.
His arms look unhealthy, Skinny.
Girls everywhere, don't learn how to handle situations with men that annoy you. Become a man instead. That's what those pictures say to me.
Fucking gross.
This is so boring.
Does anyone warn them when they are considering transition that at best, if they are very lucky, they'll get the crumbs from the gay table, but will likely have to settle for another dickless surgical mutant?
When discussing an article on why inclusive medical...
Okay, so basically, I just want to say that the summary there is it was mostly people criticizing her actions and the implications of those actions, people worried about her mental health, and basically concerned for her. And then occasionally there were some people making genuinely not very nice kind of personal insults about her appearance or her attitude. I just realized I said her a lot there, which is, I just realized I totally went against my my classic, you know, I'm gonna do the old bleep. I don't usually do it, but like I'm very committed to my not using gender pronouns, mostly because at this point I view it as a challenge just to make this video slightly more interesting. Because it's like, let's be clear, the arguments don't offer a challenge. So the main challenge I like to interact with is trying to phrase my grammar in such a way as to avoid using gender pronouns. But yeah, whatever. I can't be bothered to repeat all of that again. So, with all of that said, I don't think that's any basis for saying that the gender critical movement doesn't include trans-identified females in its feminism. You would, like, the problem is, again, this is the issue, okay? So much of this has just been making a statement and then just providing a load of different quotes that all seem to be saying kind of different things with, like, different kind of meanings and intentions, and then not actually explaining why those quotes evidence the claim being made. You can say, well, they don't actually support trans-identified females, but that's not really, but if you just throw out like a load of quotes, like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be understanding here. Like, what part of those quotes, like, sure, I would agree that maybe the worst case scenario was the ones that were making kind of personal insults, but even then, personally insulting somebody doesn't mean you're not including them in your feminism. Like, if any radical feminist said, oh, that person's ugly, like, so what? That doesn't, I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, essentially what you have to get here is somebody saying that feminism should not actively advocate for the rights of Paige. And there was no example of that given. That would be the one thing that would prove the point, and you didn't have a quote to that effect.
Terms for trans people with a uterus can help prevent them from dying of ovarian cancer, they blame the trans man's death on him, saying,
perhaps Shahi should have gone to therapy for her mental illness rather than transitioning. That way, she would overcome the fear of her own body and her regular checkups like the rest of us. Big Pharma wins at every turn.
Based.
This is so disgusting. What the fuck are these surgeons doing to people? How is a young lesbian with her whole life ahead of her having her first sexual experience with a rancid cavity attached to a likely twisted and depraved man's body? Seriously, what is the world coming to?
We really are just on like, look at random quotes from random people. Like that's it. That's just where we're at right now. It's like, hey, I hope you're ready for some random quotes by random people you've never heard of that you will probably feel various different ways about. Like some of this stuff I think is objectionable, some of it I think is fine. It's kind of just like occurring and just kind of randomly. It's like I'll be like, oh yeah, that's fine. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. No, that's a bit, inappropriate, blah blah blah, and that's it. But I'm just like sat there like, what's the point in any of this?
And that is someone with very deep mental health issues. Oh, but it's not a mental health issue, is it? But they'll kill themselves, right?
This has been the weirdest voice so far.
Everything about it is screwed up and so tragic.
It takes a complete lack of empathy to say that you're including trans men in the liberation of females when you call them things like mutilated and disgusting surgical mutants. A young lesbian with a rancid cavity attached to a likely twisted and depraved man's body. Fuck you. Like, fuck you.
So triggered. Like, look, even if you think it's bad, like there are people who say bad stuff on the internet. Get over it. Like, genuinely, just get over it.
And as always, they managed to get their homophobia in against gay, trans, and cis men, implying gay cis men would only ever get with a trans dude to use him to subject him to painful anal sex, use him as a free surrogate, only to be a deadbeat dad that only shows up when he's not fucking men in a public bathroom. As gay men do, because it's 1990 apparently, and people are still cottaging on the weekend instead of just going on fucking Grindr.
Again, I don't get what the issue of this is supposed to be. None of this is getting included in the edited down version, I think. But it's like, yeah, I'd imagine that maybe it's probably true that some straight men would have sex with, a trans-identified male because they want to do anal. Like, I could imagine that. I don't see, like, that's the issue. Like, I'm so confused because one of the things I don't like is people who just, like, moralize statements about reality. And it's like, because I'm just like, oh, well, does that statement seem like it could be true or false? I don't think to myself, like, how can I turn that statement into something I'm going to get offended by? It's just like, I mean, obviously if something genuinely is offensive, it's offensive. But somebody saying that, like, literally, yeah, the statement there, just like, the only reason a straight man would have sex with a trans-identified male is because they want to do anal. I mean, that seems like it could be true. I don't know. Like, isn't there, I felt like I've seen like a meme, and I think it's kind of an ironic meme, but it's like basically comparing trans-identified males to women, like actual women, and it's like, it's definitely a bit like of a meme, but like one of it's like talking about the trans-identified males, like one simple hole, and it's like when it's like all sorts of weird holes going on, like they got too many holes, and I always found that funny. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really know why I said that. I just found it funny.
Like, really? Claiming to be defending gay people's right to sleep with whom they want while calling them irresponsible, rapey whores in private? It becomes very clear that the gender critical movement holds extreme animosity and disgust for trans men, despite their claims that they support them for being adult human females. But quite a lot of people who've become piqued may have believed the party line that gender critical ideology supports trans men. They might actually see trans men as lost women, and they feel empathy in that regard. But
little do they know, there are some random people on Facebook who have said some stuff that is maybe a little bit kind of mean and unsympathetic. Oh, goodness me, what a... Oh, how I can't believe this happened. They really got tricked. They sure did. And those gay men wait until they find out that a bunch of people also said some like kind of speculative stuff about, I guess, like straight men who have sex with trans-identified males are gay or whatever. I wasn't really paying attention. But, you know, I've been paying attention for about 10 solid minutes of nonsense. So I think I've earned a break. Yeah, nothing. It's basically just... It has just been an onslaught of just random quotes and no substantial point of like, here is how. Like I was saying, there's been no argument for like, here is how gender critical ideology hurts trans-identified females. Here is how gender critical ideology condemns gay men. There's been nothing like that. It's just been, here is a load of random quotes attributed to nobody from a random Facebook group, which the vast majority of people watching this, I imagine, have never been on, and some of it's kind of objectionable. Oh, wow, how's the gender critical movement going to recover from that?
As we've discussed, empathy is a blockade to dehumanization, and the dehumanization of trans people is integral to gender critical ideology taking hold in your mind. Eliciting disgust and fear responses towards trans men happens in different ways than what we've covered for trans women. But there are many similarities. The fear response is pretty similar in gender critical parents and activists. I need to protect my child from the trans lobby trying to transdom. But the method of invoking that fear plays out differently for trans men. Namely, the disgust seems to be much more visceral and personal to them. This isn't someone trying to appropriate and taint womanhood from the outside. To them, trans men not only dilute the purity of the sex binary, but are an affront to
To them, I think that was ADR.
Trans men not only dilute, appropriate, and taint womanhood from the outside. To them, trans men not only dilute.
To them, trans men not only. I live for obvious ADR.
Appropriate and taint womanhood from the outside. To them, trans men not only dilute the purity of the sex binary, but are an affront to womanhood itself. Gender traitors. People who give up everything that makes them beautiful in exchange for a mockery of maleness. When they speak of trans men, they speak of them as if they were a collection of scars and wounds, not people, just the empty, rotting bodies of butchered women with dead eyes. Nobody who speaks of trans men like that includes them in their feminism. Nobody who speaks of trans men like that is even worthy of calling themselves a feminist. The recruitment of people into the gender critical cult is the most critical step in keeping the cult alive and solidifying its power. But what happens after you're in the cult? And how do they keep you there? How does it affect your family, your relationships, your mental health? What kind of things do the members do in service of their ideology? And what are the costs to them and the people around them? How has gender critical ideology led to a resurgence in conversion therapy? Find out in part 2. As I mentioned before, there is so much information to convey that even hours of video feels like it's falling short, so you can find way more screenshots here.
I mean, speaking of that, that's an appropriate way to end with this part, because I was kind of thinking to myself, boy, I can't believe we got all the way through a 2 hour and 20-minute video about recruitment to the gender critical like worldview or whatever, you know, gender critical point of view, without anything coming close, really, to the main reasons why I'm gender critical. Like, shockingly, I know this is crazy to imagine, but some people become gender critical without joining Facebook groups for boomer parents. I know that's crazy to imagine. We're actually gonna wait. Boom. What have we been watching? Oh, Vsauce, 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 Doug, some guy. I will say, so like Vsauce, I've taken to listening to Vsauce while I go to sleep, and I actually think it's working like super well. It's like a good combination of like interesting but kind of soothing, So yeah, I've been really into Vsauce. Can't say I've been listening to much ContraPoints while going to bed. I haven't watched ContraPoints in a while. It's interesting it's even there. And yeah, Doug. I just think, you know, I would recommend Doug. It's a cute name too. Doug.
Generic greetings, fellow traveler. Thanks for stopping by. If you haven't seen part 1 of this series, arrête, go back. These are meant to be watched in order. The information
I have seen part 1 of this video. Ooh, hello. I have seen part 1 of this video.
I have to tell you tonight is incredibly important, but it's also incredibly
I would like to say, if you haven't seen the first 10 parts of my response, then go back and watch it. To be fair, I actually think we might still be just on part 3 right now, but we might be on part 4. We'll see.
disturbing, depressing, and triggering. We're going to be discussing every traumatic thing a person could possibly be triggered by, and it's only if I go into heavy detail on a subject that I'll warn you. We'd honestly have a content warning every 3 seconds if I didn't. I know this because I tried, and it was untenable. This part of the series is first and foremost about the epidemic of child abuses committed at the hands of gender-critical parents.
I kind of feel like we're going to have less to say here, right? Because it's just going to be like, or whatever, we'll see.
At the explicit direction of gender-critical thought leaders and activists. And while we're on the subject of the stars of tonight's show, I follow one rule. Unless they have already publicly outed themselves as part of this ideology, I will not use any of their real names or photos. The rest of my caveats and warnings are in part 1, and you should have already heard them. This is me passing the buck, or loony, if you live around my parts. There are no ad breaks in this series thanks to my patrons on Patreon, so thank them or join them.
Yeah. Also, if you want to go onto my Patreon, because, you know, like I've got all these sponsors begging me. They're saying, please, we really want to be associated with what you're saying on your channel because it's so compatible with the corporate interests of our company. But I keep having to say to them, no, I get my money from Patreon, thank you. But you know, like it is getting tempting. Anyway, have I even acknowledged yet that we're on part 2? Because we are on part 2. Like, I mean, obviously I know you guys watching this, but just like, it just feels like I should vocally acknowledge it because I don't even know if I feel like I just silently just loaded it up and just kept plowing on through.
So bad at the YouTube side of having a YouTube channel. I feel so corny asking people to subscribe. Like, hey there, K's Bays, and welcome to another installment of sponsored products I actually really use and enjoy. But before we start, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Actually, that's not that different to how I act. That's big, but I'll deal with that later. Anyways, please subscribe. It's incredibly validating. Too soon. Okay, well, get comf and get cozy, because we're about to start the show.
Oh wait, I hope we don't have another credit sequence. Oh, no. Screw it. Oh my lord, there's another credit sequence. It goes on for so long. I'm still traumatized by how long it went on for last time. Okay. Nothing is real. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-dub.
One of the most egregious lies that gender-critical anti-trans activists parrot is that transitioning is just a tool used to convert same-sex attracted youth into straight youth. I'm going to give this debunking exactly as much attention as it deserves.
Oh, good.
The claim that affirming trans kid is transing gay kids into straight kids requires that the trans youth was homosexual prior to transition. But plenty of trans youth also become homosexual by transitioning. A straight person that transition becomes a gay person. It goes both ways. Also, bi and pan people.
Wait. Oh, okay, I see. But this is dumb. Sorry, look, we're not confused about this. I just realized how dumb this is. So, because I was confused for a second, because it took a while for me to work out what was even being said, because I was like, what? So basically, the claim being made here is, well, sometimes people who are straight will become gay or lesbian because of transitioning. But the point is, the claim wasn't that literally like the sole purpose of transition is to turn people into straights. Like, that's not the claim. The claim is that gay and lesbian people do transition into straight people according to the gender dogma. Nobody's claiming that, like, I mean, yeah, it's just bizarre because nobody was claiming that every single transition person has to transition into a straight person. Like, we're all familiar with the growing number of biological male lesbians. So, whatever.
People exist, and transitioning doesn't make them straight. So where are they getting this idea that youth transitioning is conversion therapy? Well,
from the other example of people who don't transition from straight into, and I'm seeing people pointing out, obviously, they don't actually transition from anything to anything else, but I'm just using that language.
They see gender non-conforming kids and assume they're gay.
No. What? No. What are you on about? That's not what happens. They see people who identify as men or boys who are attracted to other men or boys, and then later on they suddenly reveal that they're trans. It's not like, I don't know anybody who's just assuming that like effeminate men are automatically gay. Who's assuming this? This is ridiculous.
And then assume that transitioning makes them straight. Like, just because this male kid is swishy does not a homo make. The truth is, like with all gender critical claims, these accusations are nothing but projection.
What? Nothing but projection. So, okay, we'll see. But I don't know. I don't want to speculate about what that was. What the projection is going to be. So let's see.
Arguing that youth being affirmed and socially transitioning isn't conversion therapy is pointless. The argument has been made, and anyone who chooses to believe that conspiracy theory will not be persuaded otherwise unless they want to be.
Okay, Caelan, you said the argument's been made. Where has the argument been made against the idea that trans identity is a tool for conversion therapy? By the way, it literally is in places like Iran. It's also, I mean, in many kind of other cultures, the idea of trans identity was the only way for two biological males to have sex with each other and it be deemed legitimate. This is, for example, there are African cultures where they had the idea of a third gender, and the idea was that if a biological male was gay and wanted to have sex with other biological males, well, they couldn't. I mean, I've kind of explained this before. Within a patriarchal society, interpersonal relationships become a nexus for patriarchal oppression. And that means that you can't have a relationship between a man and another man, because then how is the patriarchal oppression going to function? You know, like, one man can't oppress the other because it's the woman's role to be oppressed. So that's one reason why homosexuality has been stigmatized throughout history. And one of the ways around that, of many, but one of the ways was to say, well, actually, if two biological males are in a relationship, then one of those biological males must no longer be a man. And of course, yeah, that is what is happening now in Iran. But it's also, of course, yes, it has happened in some African cultures. And I won't give specific examples because, Caelan literally just was dismissive of the idea of even offering up any kind of substantial kind of thoughts on this at all. So I'm not going to be looking around for sources to make sure I'm completely clear on what language I'm using. I want to say it was the Igbo, but I am aware that that's just like quite a popular African tribe, and I might just be assuming like, oh, it's an African tribe, it's probably the Igbo. So we'll just say, I mean, if you want to know about it, look it up, because it's definitely a thing. But basically, yeah, like one of the ways of doing it would say, okay, two biological males are having sex, well, one of them must not be a man. And that's where you get the third gender category. I mean, actually, I think this is also pretty much the explanation for the whole idea of like being a lady boy in Thailand. Thailand, of course, an incredibly conservative, traditionalist country, incredibly historically intolerant of the idea of homosexuality. So what do you do? Well, if there's a biological male who wants to have sex with other biological males, oh, don't worry, it's not a gay relationship. It's not a relationship that's going to challenge or complicate the patriarchal dynamics within intimate relationships. Rather, it's a relationship between a man and somebody who's not a man. So yeah, this is simply, it's undeniable that there is a facet, and I mean, literally, the one of the origins for kind of the whole idea of trans identity came from scientists in Germany who were trying to come up with cures for homosexuality. And it's not to say that they certainly weren't the only people to have come up with this idea. Many kind of people in the kind of late 19th and early 20th century were exploring this idea of men and women being, gay men being basically defective women, or in some way being, basically trapped in the identities of women. And there were some really bizarre experiments, which I'm sure you can imagine was typical for that time amongst the medical elite. But yeah, that is actually the origin, really, of this idea of trans identity. This idea of, well, there are men who want to have sex with other men. They must secretly be women. They must have women identities or something like that. And you can actually, if you kind of look back through the history, draw a pretty kind of continuous. John Money getting shouted out, but yeah, you can basically draw a continuous kind of progression from crazy wacko scientists sewing chimp testicles into gay men because they think because they think chimps have like more testosterone, which is an actual thing that happened, right the way up to John Money forcing children to perform sex acts with each other because I don't know, for some reason, for science. But yeah, and obviously John Money, of course, the person who literally came up with the idea. He coined the term gender identity. So, and was being celebrated amongst many kind of trans-identified individuals way into the 90s at the end of his life. So, whatever. The point is, there is so much evidence for this association between conversion therapy, the idea of curing homosexuality, or in some way allowing homosexuality to exist within a patriarchal society that would otherwise be hostile to the idea of homosexuality, by using this idea of trans identity to say, well, don't worry about it, they're not really gay because this person's not really a man. There's plenty of precedent for this.
I will not argue or debate their conspiracy theories, acting in reaction and allowing them to control the narrative. Because the truth about the abuse that gender-critical people inflict on children and the devastating consequences of that is enough on its own to discredit them. I will show you the myriad ways that anti-trans activists are not only unqualified to speak on the welfare of children, but promote and profit off of the abuse of them.
Actually, I need to record an outro just so I've got that done. Real quick. So just going to record the outro for the edited video. So don't get scared, I'm not going to leave quite yet. Alright everyone, so that was hopefully the end of part 4. I'm not even sure if I've recorded enough footage to get to the end of part 4. In which case this video probably won't be coming out on Sunday, and I think I'm just going to have to accept the fact that I'm not going to be able to have uploaded as many videos this weekend because I was away. But whatever, we'll see. Point is, this is the end of the video, so please do like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff if you like the video. And of course, if you want to go on Patreon, if you want to go on PayPal, that's already appreciated. If you want to do the kind of Amazon thing, that's also really appreciated. And thank you for watching, and I'll just say thank you to my current patrons. I feel like my dude Broski's crying because, I don't know, I hope it was, but just to clarify again, I'm still going to watch this until the camera basically dies is the plan. But yeah, I honestly don't think I will have got enough footage to get to 2 additional parts. So we'll see.
And I will show that the gender-critical literature that is being fed to parents is none other than the same method of conversion therapy invented to eradicate gays and lesbians. Like, pretty much down to the letter. Before examining the current popular gender-critical books on this, I want to first clear up any misconceptions around what conversion therapy looks like. To do this, we'll look at a conversion therapy guide written for parents by the founder of reparative or conversion therapy. It's called A Parent's Guide to Preventing Homosexuality. Honestly, this book read me to filth. In this book, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, an author that was recommended to me by the regulars in these
I kind of feel like this is going to be irrelevant, so I might actually do a bit of camera conserving.
Gender-critical parent groups, claims that children who act like or claim to be another gender are what he calls pre-homosexuals. meaning that if their behavior isn't corrected, they'll grow into adult homosexuals, and eventually, maybe even the final form of the homosexual, the transsexual. Pre-homosexuals are Pichu, homosexuals are Pikachu, and trans people are Raichu. He's a very helpful graphic for my people. Now, to be clear, when he says pre-homosexual, he means homosexual. He just doesn't believe that being gay is a part of who you are. So because they haven't grown into adults that have become sexually active, they can't actually be homosexual yet, because homosexuality is an act. It's not an identity. Wondering if little Timmy is gay? Here are a few signs that your child may be a pre-homosexual. Pre-homosexuals
repeatedly stated desire.
It reminds me of like the Family Guy thing, where it's like, if instead of blood, you find acid, you might have a homosexual.
Desire to be or insistence that he or she is the other sex. In boys, preference for cross-dressing or simulating female attire. In girls, insistence on wearing only stereotypical masculine clothing. Strong and persistent preference for cross-sexual roles in make-believe play or persistent fantasies of being the other sex. Intense desire to participate in the stereotypical games and pastimes of the other sex. Strong preference for playmates of the other sex.
Hey, now wait a gosh darn minute. That sounds very specifically like it's about a trans or gender non-conforming kid more than a gay kid, because attraction to the same sex isn't even mentioned once. Even though that's the entire—
Hold a minute, but sorry, like, look, I don't care, and this is not going in the edited thing, but it was supposed to be about pre-homosexuality, like that was the section. I don't know why, like, I'm sorry, I can't help myself but defend this stupid book against this nonsense. But the point was, it was supposed to be about pre-homosexuality, so obviously it wouldn't be talking about attraction. It wouldn't be talking about attraction to members of the same sex, because that would not be pre-homosexuality, it would be homosexuality. I know these people don't understand what homosexuality is, but you'd think they would, I don't know, learn at some point.
Higher definition of a homosexual. A pre-homosexual has no attraction at all. Attraction doesn't make you a homosexual. Your gender performance does. If that's causing a bit of cognitive dissonance between what you thought to be true about conversion therapy and what I'm showing you right now, that same thing happened to me. I read this entire book, cover to cover, waiting for the homos to show up. But it almost entirely focused on gender incongruences. Like Nicolosi said,
gender confusion is at the heart of the homosexual issue. It is through our maleness or our femaleness that we grow to maturity.
If you're now wondering what the difference is between trans conversion therapy and gay conversion therapy, there isn't one. They have different intended targets, but they're the same practice. They work the same way by pushing your child back into their assigned place on a rigid gender binary. Throughout the book, Nicolosi makes it clear that—
I mean, look, I still don't really care. I mean, I don't know. What? Oh, God. Should I? I guess, no, fuck it. I can't be bothered.
the path to preventing homosexuality is to prevent any incongruence between the child's gender expression and sex. To determine if a child may be a pre-homosexual, parents would be asked things like—
Ah, screw it. No, I'm gonna have to deal with this. God damn it. Like, I wish I could not respond, but I just have to, so.
They're the same practice. They work the same way by pushing your child back into their assigned place on a rigid gender binary. Throughout the book, Nicolosi makes it clear that the path to preventing homosexuality is to prevent any incongruence between the child's gender expression and sex.
Okay, so I went for a while using my bad webcam because a lot of stupid things were said. And I don't know, I was struggling. But basically, here you'll notice. So I don't really care. But basically, the point being made is that, well, trans conversion therapy is about preventing incongruence between expression and sex. But do you know what gender expression is? Or do you know what expression is? It's gender. So, and if you are gender critical, then you would think that there is no expression necessary to be associated with your sex. So gender critical people, like, already you have an issue. If trans conversion therapy is about preventing an incongruence between sex and gender expression, well, guess what? Gender critical people are fine with any kind of gender expression. They don't care about, whether or not your biological sex matches with your gender expression. Indeed, gender critical people are far more likely to be critical of people who are overly gender non-conforming than people who are, let me phrase that again. In fact, gender critical people are far more likely to be critical of those who are overly gender conforming than they are of people who are too. Did I say it right? I feel like I've screwed that up every single time. Let me try again just one more time, because I feel like I did get it that time, but I doubted myself. Gender critical. In fact, gender critical people are far more likely to be critical of those who are overly gender conforming than they are to be critical of those who are gender non-conforming. And I think that's undeniable. Like, I've seen gender critical feminists kind of be a little bit uncomfortable with women who act out like femininity, traditional femininity, to an extreme degree. But I've never seen a gender critical feminist critical of a woman who acts out or kind of entirely rejects traditional femininity and doesn't express traditional femininity at all. So yeah, I mean, already you have an issue. The problem is screw it. Okay, we're not even gonna. Okay.
To determine if a child may be a pre-homosexual, parents would be asked things like,
"Are you concerned about your child's behavior? Are you wondering if he or she may be displaying symptoms of gender confusion?"
He would say that to be of help to concerned
things are okay. We're on part 2.
Parents. There that is again.
To be of help to concerned parents, the therapist must not only be informed about...
Sorry, I do like the thing of oh look, concerned parents, as if parents being concerned is a bad thing in itself.
...childhood indicators of future homosexuality, but he or she must also be sensitive and respectful towards those parents who desire to maximize the possibility of their child growing up straight. Therapists such as myself believe that healthy development requires that a person's interior sense of gender identity and his biology must correspond.
He says all that, and yet still makes little mention of trans identities, though he clearly knows they exist. Instead, he sees trans people as a sub-community of homosexuals. The same gender confusion, just a little more lost.
Gender confusion is at the heart of the homosexual issue. It is through our maleness or our femaleness that we grow to maturity. Transgenderism is a theme the gay community has, for public relations reasons, long downplayed.
That's interesting.
Gay activists correctly suspect that the public senses something not normal about a boy thinking he's a girl. But with the recent political successes of the gay movement, that effort to present homosexual men and women as just as gender typical as straights is slowly giving way to a bolder approach.
There's that gut sense again. People just sensing trans people are not normal. That same thought-terminating cliche that frees people up to ignore all evidence that contradicts their beliefs. Of course your child isn't really gay. He's been convinced to act this way by outside, sinister forces. You should never trust your child. Only your gut instincts.
Many parents detect an unnatural quality of sham or caricature in the boy who is explicitly effeminate. No matter what the profession claims or implies, most people still have the instinctive awareness that something just isn't right about homosexuality.
The outside influences mentioned in this book are largely identical to the ones argued by gender-critical anti-trans activists, except of course using trans instead of gay.
More and more teens are coming out to their friends and parents. This is no doubt due to the increased presence of the gay identity as fashionable and in-your-face countercultural. The gay movement has shifted the debate from behavior to identity, thus forcing opponents into the position of appearing to attack the civil rights of homosexuals. Activists succeed in making this equation through a careful choice of words, referring to homosexually attracted individuals as a sexual minority, a people, and a community. Many parents also become confused by the claims of gay activism. They're made to feel guilty and unenlightened for attempting to encourage their child's heterosexuality. A parent's efforts to promote heterosexuality in their child may seem, in some indirect way, to be opposing gay civil rights because the condition is said to define the person.
Sound familiar? If not, it will. The cult programming guides of gender-critical parents rest on 2 books: Desist, Detrans and Detox, and Irreversible Damage. These books are suggested ad nauseum by everyone, to everyone, especially new members. They are touted as a must-buy. They're glowing reviews, which is fairly understandable given how few conversion therapy guides are on the market these days. For the most part, I will be focusing on the book Desist, Detrans, Detox. Triple D. It is by far the most frequent book recommended to parents in these groups. And I think it's because Irreversible Damage is focused on like trans boys or non-binary people assigned female at birth, whereas DDD is not. It's on everyone. And this book is, in my opinion, the core doctrine for gender critical parents in these groups. Obviously, I can't do an in-depth breakdown of every topic in this video, but I will always link to a resource I've either created for this video or that someone else has already made. In this case, for a response to Irreversible Damage, check out Caelan series, where she examines the text, its claims, and its dubious sources, all in the description below.
Maybe that's somebody I can respond to. Caelan. Caelan. Okay, Google Caelan. So what we do when we're looking to see whether or not we want to respond to somebody is we Google the word turf. Then we Google the word trans. Nothing came up for that. Is there a trans call? Okay, it's literally just about irreversible damage, which I don't really care about. So, okay, we're not going to bother with it.
I'm probably above, too. She's here somewhere.
By removing something wanted, dinner, you may extinguish or discourage the target behavior, which is your daughter ignoring her given name.
For the first half of this video, we'll be discussing Desist, Detrans, Detox, which is by any standard a conversion therapy manual. It is written by a self-identified straight white Catholic woman, Maria Keffler. It guides a parent step by step on how to take your kid from trans-identifying to cis-identifying. Not only that, but how to peak your converted child into believing gender-critical ideology. The second half of the video shows how gender-critical parents are using this book to indoctrinate their children and the harm and destruction it's causing. If I were to first open this book as a parent, I think I might see it as pretty legit. And assuming I never did any further research into the book or the people propping her and it up, I might never be any wiser than that. Like, let me give you an example of what I mean. You open the self-published book, and you see there are 7 glowing review blurbs at the beginning. Some of them look like they're even doctors at prestigious-sounding institutions, so it's a great sign, right? Well, what actually happens when you test that assumption? Like, if somebody is going to call a book life-saving or groundbreaking, it's kind of necessary to know who they are, because a life-saving book to, say, a raging homophobe might be different from a gay person's. So who are these experts backing up her claims here? What do they believe? How did they come to read this book? Well, let's take a quick little peek, shall we? Miriam Grossman. Miriam Grossman said that DDD was
a step-by-step survival guide for loving parents fighting to save their children from the clutches of the gender industry.
She also suggests homosexual conversion therapy should be allowed, and has even written musingly about the time she suggested it to a suicidal gay refugee fleeing a homophobic country, despite knowing it was unethical. Kristen Allen said,
Keffler's perspective as a parent and educator is unique and invaluable.
Kristen Allen also said that the causes of sexual orientation still need to be debated and researched, and children should not be taught about homosexuals. Michelle Curtella said,
Maria Keffler has written a life-saving guide for parents who are faced with the challenge of saving their suffering, gender-confused child from what has become a society-wide transgendering cult.
Michelle is an executive director.
Am I allowed to say that I don't really know about this book?
Of the American College of Pediatrics. Sounds legit, right? Wrong. You might be confusing the American College of Pediatrics with the American Academy of Pediatrics. The ACP versus the AAP. The AAP is the largest pediatrics organization in the country, and it's recognized. The ACP, of which Michelle Curtella is executive director, is a small group of physicians that left the AAP after the AAP officially stated that gay parents pose no risk to adopted children. They just could not abide those filthy gays having babies. As a group, the activism they do is shit like sending a letter to 14,000 school districts recommending gay conversion therapy for their students. Ready for a shockingly familiar sounding quote? It is clear that when well-intentioned but misinformed school personnel encourage students to come out as gay and be affirmed, there is a serious risk of erroneously labeling students who may merely be experiencing transient sexual confusion and or engaging in sexual experimentation.
I mean, at first when I heard about it, I was like, oh, this book seems like it could be interesting. Because I feel like the whole detrans detox thing, it relates to something I said in like a previous live stream where I was like, oh, I feel like, you know, detransitioning seems to be an important step in like self-love, which would also, you know, extend to other kind of healthy things like exercise and good diet and all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking, okay, like detrans detox, it sounds like maybe it would be encouraging that, like basically saying, hey, you don't need to transition, you can just do things that would be healthy. But then I found out it was by a Catholic, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. That sounds like it could just be a load of mumbo jumbo to me.
Premature labeling may then lead some adolescents into harmful homosexual behaviors that they would not otherwise pursue. Oh, and there's Michelle Cretan's name right on it.
This is a realistic, often wrenching, but ultimately hopeful account that reminds parents and anyone affected by the gender madness that they are not alone, and that the truth will set them free.
That little gem was by Mary Rice Hassan. You know the drill by now. Old straight white person who said that the problem with letting gay kids in the Scouts would be that it could normalize their orientation if they are accepted. or that exposure to a gay kid might be harmful to straight kids because gays engage in specialized sexual behaviors that are not for the squeamish. In her not best-selling book, Get Out Now, 7 Reasons to Pull Your Child from Public School Before It's Too Late, Mary clearly comes out as anti-gay rights, saying that people should be concerned that the public believes that gays and lesbians should be morally allowed to have sex or get married. Can you imagine that? Allowing gay people to have sex without being judged and shamed? Sickening. She says that a culture that
no longer knows why it matters whether sex occurs between a husband and a wife or between 2 men, 2 women, reflects the reality of living in a culture terribly confused about gender and sexuality.
The It Gets Better campaign that we'll talk about later was a suicide prevention movement started by Dan Savage after a string of horrible suicides in the LGBTQ+ community. This was also targeted.
I like the implication that there's such a thing as a non-horrible suicide. Like, unlike those suicides that are like fine, you know.
By Mary.
It Gets Better isn't a gender-driven campaign that caricatures traditional morality and religious people, drives a wedge between parents and children, and aggressively promotes deviant sex.
Oh, so now I can't even aggressively promote deviant sex?
Family, friends, counselors, pastors,
People do kind of seem like a bunch of dorks.
and teachers will benefit from this highly readable examination of what will likely be the greatest medical disaster of the last 100 years.
That's Patrick W. Lappert, a plastic surgeon and chaplain at Courage, an ex-gay Catholic organization that used the 12-step program.
Plastic surgeon? That's a good sign.
To convince gay people to remain celibate, lest they burn in hell. Documents from Courage describe being gay as the homosexual disorder. There's also one other person on here who is like literally a nobody with no claim to any kind of authority and is going by a pseudonym, but she's a co-worker of Maria Kessler's with no apparent relevant credentials. So this is a book held up as important and life-saving by a group of publicly anti-gay people. And that's just what you get when you pull back the curtain on the opening blurbs of this book. It hasn't even started yet. So you'll excuse me if I go into this book with a little bit of skepticism of Maria Kessler's with no apparent relevant credentials. So this is a book held up as important.
So I think this is probably where I need to say something because, like, I'm just gonna literally say, but I feel like I can't let so much time go by without actually, you know. Did I nail that? Oh wait, we can't even see it, can we? Doig. Boom.
Pseudonym, like. She's a co-worker of Maria Kessler's with no apparent relevant credentials. So this is a book held up as important and life-saving by a group of publicly anti-gay people. And that's just what you get when you pull back the...
Okay, so basically, so far we just had a very long section, which was admittedly good for making some progress, seeing as I had nothing to say about this book I've frankly never heard of. And apparently it's written by a Catholic woman, and it's been endorsed by a bunch of people who are homophobic. And the book itself is about how to, I don't know, stop your kid from being trans-identified. I haven't responded to anything said because I don't think it's relevant. It's some random book written by some random Catholic person, and apparently it's popular in these Facebook groups for, you know, like parents. I don't know. I mean, whatever. The point is, I don't know any gender critical people. Like, this is kind of a you know, whatever, like, what do they call it? Degrees of separation situation, right? Because there were lots of homophobic quotes presented from people who have endorsed this book, but quotes which I would not expect to see from any gender critical person themselves. The series has 3 parts, and they get shorter each time, which is nice. I think the final part's only an hour and 17 minutes.
The curtain on the opening blurbs of this book. It hasn't even started yet. So you'll excuse me if I go into this book with a little bit of skepticism about how this unqualified cis-straight white woman propped up by the anti-gay and Christian conversion therapy movements is protecting gay people. Wish the gender-critical parents had done the same. I'm gonna get this out of the way right now and allow me this vent on the book itself. Highly readable? I'm gonna be honest here. The only thing Maria Kessler knows less about than queer and trans kids is how to write a fucking book. This reads like a collection of ramblings from an incel manifesto.
Lack of self-awareness.
Huge chunks are just verbatim copied from her Christian mommy blog, which may be why the book reads as if it were unedited. But that might be because it does not appear to have, had an editor. On this blog, she rants about how she offends relativist, cow manure opinions, like that marriages aren't just for straight people, or that it's possible there's more than one or no God. Kefler skirts around the issue
More than one, or no god.
mostly, as most surreptitiously homophobic people do in an age of increased gay acceptance, but whines in interviews with far-right blogs like the Daily Signal.
My son told me that he has been called a homophobe because he has expressed his belief in traditional marriage.
Maria Kefler's son sounds like a bit of a nerd.
This blog she interviewed for is fully funded by the Heritage Foundation, which routinely publishes racist, homophobic, and sexist propaganda. Maria goes as far as to say that she finds it shocking that children should even be taught about homosexuality. Trans people aren't her only target, just the target of this book. One might ask, if she doesn't want to prevent children from being homosexual, why prevent them from knowing that it's a possibility? The thing is, while straight people might think they're being covert about their homophobia, gay people have seen it all before. Queers have been hearing your fucking bullshit for our entire lives. You're not slick. The fact that you were able to distract a bunch of cishet parents from the fact that you're profiting off of and dictating the terms of the abuse of their child is not an indication of your skill or prowess as a writer. It's a demonstration of their poor critical thinking skills and, frankly, poor taste. Her book is not only riddled with logical fallacies and anecdotal evidence, it's solely based on them. In one bitterly ironic blog post about confirmation bias, Maria near perfectly explains what will drive the popularity of her future book.
A disturbing number of people trust Caelan, the 26-year-old mom's nutrition blog, more than they do the FDA. Not because they've researched Caelan's credentials or read the abstracts of studies carried out by the actual trained nutritionist, but because they prefer what Caelan says to what the FDA says.
Likewise, a disturbing number of people trust Maria, the homophobic mom's vanity blog, more than they do science, not because they've researched Maria's credentials or read the abstracts of studies carried out by actual trained medical professionals, but because they prefer what Maria says to what the science says. And Maria makes sure of this. Part of the grand conspiracy in this book is what Maria refers to as the gender industry. When what the gender industry is and how it works is explained, she does so in very nebulous ways. It's everyone from doctors and scientists to teachers to CEOs, very much a follow the money vibe. Because if someone's making money, then they probably have ulterior motives. Fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with following a money trail. People should do that. If you want me to follow the money, fine, I'll follow it. So prior to her success selling her
We've already made the John Money joke, so we won't make it again, except I just did.
global cult conspiracy theory to a global cult based off of conspiracy theories, she was, it seems, wildly unsuccessful as a writer. She said she dreamed of being one, knew she was supposed to be one, and felt that God had created her to be one. Unfortunately for Maria, she doesn't really have, talent. So her stuff didn't actually, sell. Luckily for Miss Maria, there's a new cash cow in town. Parents terrified of their gender and sexual minority kids not turning out how they demand. And they don't care if your prose and dialogue sounds like the novel I wrote in high school, The Witch of Shattin. All they care about is you hearing that they are correct and that they are good parents. And their woes will cease eventually. And they're willing to pay. Cheaper than a therapist for my child, am I right? So Maria's profiting off of what I'll call the gender industry, if you'll allow me a little cheek. If profiting off of trans identity of children makes you part of the gender industry, Maria's in it. She has tried to profit off the cult in many ways, some successful, some distasteful, even the most transphobic in the group. While they praised her book, Desist, Detrans, and Detox, likely because she tells them they're completely right about everything they already believe and are amazing, brave, courageous parents, her next book endeavor would confuse people in the group. She posted about the latest book from her organization, which was an anti-trans adult
It is pretty soothing music.
coloring book composed of the already free, poorly executed, and entirely deranged drawings by Aaron Brewer, which they decolored and repackaged as something for gender-critical people to pay money for. She then spammed it in every gender-critical Facebook group I was in, which by this point is a lot. The reaction was, well, hilarious. Reviews like, it's a bit cringy and tacky, and I would never buy this, and I'm not thinking anyone would pay for it, and a bias comes off of it, then I'm not sure it's going to be truly productive, pointing to the attacks on Planned Parenthood in the comics. It seems that Maria tipped her little hand here. They're willing to pay money to learn how to DIY conversion therapy at home, but this was just an obvious cash grab. Kelly Boxdye-Keen even commented to say who would buy it, which prompted Maria to admit that she's already purchased the books, and literally not a single one had been sold. Which honestly, she should be used to by now. It's kind of the norm for her writing. She's no Joanne Rowling. The coloring books didn't sell, probably because, as a group regular put it, coloring is, for me anyway, something I do for fun and to create something lovely. This coloring book would not serve
Yeah, the coloring book looks super cringe. Again, I could make the point of the fact that the gender critical people on this Facebook group seem to be quite dismissive of her.
either of those purposes for
Oh, sorry.
me. From what I can see, Maria deleted this post. Fuck, imagine you're her trans kid and you come home from school with your friends and Maria No Hinges Kefler is at the fucking table with her Crayola carefully coloring this. So that's a bit of a backstory on Maria, the book, and its supporters. Backstory is unfortunately both integral to understanding the book and requires way more research to uncover than the average person would put in. So I did it for you. You're welcome. And as far as cult texts go, DDD is quite explicit. Without any interpretation beyond the text itself, the book creates a reality of fear and paranoia and is designed to convince newcomers to the cult to do what almost all cults do: manipulate recruits, isolate themselves and their children from anyone who is not part of the cult. The parallels between the Parents' Guide to Preventing Homosexuality and DDD are strikingly obvious, and I would be wholly surprised if Maria had not read it and used it to inform her book and her tactics. One such tactic that's in both books is manipulation.
First things first, please understand that you have no real control over anyone but yourself. It's almost impossible to force people to do something they don't want to do. You can, however, engineer circumstances around another person in your sphere of influence in such a way that you encourage him or her to want to do what you want done. How do you tweak someone's circumstances in order to make your desires more favorable in their eyes? One way is by harnessing motivations.
That's a whole lot of words to say lie and manipulate, but I guess she thought she could lie and manipulate her way out of us realizing that. Sidebar, but she's a really shitty Christian actually. Like, now that I think about it, if there's a hell, I feel like you go to it for things like lying.
No, you don't. You go to hell. I mean, you do go to hell for things like lying, but the main reason you go to hell is because you don't believe in Christianity. God, it's like you can't accuse someone of being a bad Christian and then demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding, works-based perspective on Christian salvation.
Maria, after you go to hell or not, leave a comment in the C section and give us a temperature reading, like, so we know which sins are mortal and which are like loose guidelines.
Although actually, to be fair, like this person is a Catholic, so I guess they do qualify as a bad Christian, but not for the lying thing, for the false satanic pseudo-pagan religion thing.
Like yellow lights or stop signs. The premise of DDD is a known conspiracy theory held by gender criticals and the alt-right, that trans children are being brainwashed by a cult. But Maria takes it a step further and suggests that your child has been metaphorically or metaphysically replaced by a second person inside them who is the cult bizarro version of your child.
Hold on a minute. Guys, like that seems like very it's very much like trans identity, right? Like again, I will say I don't even know, like, should I you know what, screw it. We're gonna switch to the camera again because I don't actually want to record that much longer, so we might as well. Are we right? Oh yeah. Let's do this.
Are being brainwashed by a cult. But Maria takes it a step further and suggests that your child has been metaphorically or metaphysically replaced by a second person inside them who is the cult bizarro version of your child.
I like how this is being presented if it's like very silly, which it is very silly, but like, how is it any more silly than claiming to be a woman trapped inside of a man's body, right? Like, they're functionally the same level of silliness. You're still talking about some kind of weird metaphysical Cartesian dualism, which just is completely baseless and nonsense. I don't really see how I can make fun of one and not the other, and I'm happy to make fun of both.
When your child isn't acting in ways that you approve of, very sissily, that is your sweet baby angel. When your child is acting in ways that...
Isn't it funny how sissy like means like obviously like a guy who dresses up like a woman, but also means like cis as in like not trans.
You disapprove of, like asking to be called a pronoun you don't like, that's the filthy cult controlling them. And if they say something that goes against the gender critically acclaimed sex binary, that thought was given to them by the cult. It's an effective way to turn everything about their child's gender identity into a fear trigger. Every time their child says, that's not my name anymore, that's really their real child being taken...
That's not my name. That's not my name. That's a good point. How can a non-binary person be... Yeah. What is a non-binary person if they're not... I don't know. That's weird, isn't it? Because I was going to say, aren't they all pan? But, I don't know.
Over by the thing wanting to be called something else. The constant fear devolves into parents finding any behaviors that challenge gender critical ideology, such as breaking gender stereotypes, threatening.
Sometimes I feel like my parting is like too wide, and it makes me feel like I'm going bald. But I will say I don't know anyone in my family who's gone bald, so
point where they talk about being reduced to tears when their assigned female at birth child cuts their hair shorter than a girl cut. And while Maria refers to children coming out as them being brainwashed by a cult, no substantive evidence is provided for these claims. In fact, her shaky connections of how being trans is a cult will always directly parallel things she says herself in the book. It's astonishing how blatant it is. She reminds me of me in gym class, standing by on my own net, and every time they kick the ball to me, kicking it in, because those stupid boys should be smart enough not to punt that germ-covered shit at me. She actually managed...
Wait, hold on a minute.
It's astonishing how blatant it is. She reminds me of me in gym class, standing by on my own net, and every time they kick the ball to me, kicking it in, because those stupid boys should be smart enough not to punt that germ-covered shit at me.
Oh, I see. So an own goal. Because I was going to say otherwise that would be the offside. I'll be offside, right? But no, yeah. I mean, it's fine if it's an own goal. I mean, that's not against the rules. It is very... That's kind of like admitting to be incredibly obnoxious. Like, the ball comes your way and you just intentionally own goal to sabotage your own team. You know what, actually, I've realized it's incredibly funny, and I wish I weren't playing this at 1.5 speed, because I guess it's just going to annoy everyone who watches this now, because I'm going to include it, based on the fact that the idea of intentionally getting or scoring own goals against your own team feels like it might be exactly the type of attitude that motivated Caelan Conrad to make this video, because this whole thing feels like one massive own goal.
She actually manages to succeed in proving that by her standards, she herself is a leader of a cult. Let's look at an example of this. Maria says that one thing that determines...
Yeah, I know, yeah, like what a jerk. Like who, like I wasn't great at football. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't great. I could just never, I was always too busy thinking about stuff. So and my feet would never move right. You know, like I always feel like I went for it, and at one time, like literally, here's a true story about me in football. One time I went to university, and I mean, obviously, I don't know, like it's not basically went to university, and the first time we played a football match at uni, nobody knew that I actually wasn't that good at football, obviously. And I happened to like totally just nail it. Like I had some like great moments, and I scored, I think, like 4 goals, which for football, I mean, y'all know that's a lot. And I was like, yeah, because the thing is, at football, there is a degree to which is kind of luck based. Like obviously, if you kick the ball at the goal, there's a decent chance it's going to go in. Like, you know, it might get saved. Like even the best player in the world might get a shot saved, and even the worst player in the world might have a shot go in. So I basically just got lucky like 4 times, took some shots which probably shouldn't have gone in, but they went in. They were like, wow, good job. And then I was like, yeah, great. And like, I think I actually convinced myself that I'd just become good at football and I hadn't just been incredibly lucky. So then we play it the next time, and I flopped so hard. Like I was just so bad. Like people would pass the ball to me, and I'd like go to kick it or something, and it would like just, my feet would just miss it entirely, and it would just go behind me straight to another player. And I was just like, okay, no mind. I tried. I'm sorry. I should have just like played that one game at uni and then never played a game again, and then people could have just believed. I think, to be fair, I will say actually that I suspect the people who were really good at football could probably tell that I wasn't good at football, even though I did score 4 goals. Because I think they probably like, because obviously, I mean, in football, it's not all about the goals. It's about like creating space and tackling and passing. And I don't think those areas I did necessarily so good. It just happened that occasionally I was in a position to take a shot and then it went in. But I think actually people who knew about football weren't like, this guy's an incredible football player. They could probably tell that what I really knew deep down, which is that I just was not a great football player and got lucky.
Whether a group is a cult.
Those inside the cult are the right, holy, and altruistic community, while those outside are dangerous, immoral, and hateful.
So, she's saying that cults make you divide up your worldview into good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains, protagonists and antagonists, right? That's true. They do that. It's a useful tactic because it keeps that fear and disgust of the antagonist heightened, while also creating the bond you get from being an in-group with an us versus them mentality. People bond over shared rivalry all the time, and it creates a strong sense of loyalty. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And bad guys.
Community
is a cult.
Those inside the
this. Maria says that one thing that determines whether a group is a cult.
Those inside the cult are the right, holy, and altruistic community, while those outside are dangerous, immoral, and hateful.
So, like, here's the thing. You'll notice this is from the book, which Caelan is saying is awful, and it's talking about trans identity as a cult, which kind of shows, like, the issue with just kind of, like, vaguely throwing accusations of being a cult at things. Like, anybody can do it. And that's why it's been very easy throughout this video for me to just pause every now and then and go, oh, lack of self-awareness. Oh, that's hypocritical. Oh, that's exactly what trans people do. Because it's super easy, which is why it's kind of boring, which is why this whole video is kind of pointless. And goodness me, are we making some progress through it though? Like, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be anything that we actually have to say particularly substantial in response to this whole part of the video. At some point I'm going to have to go, but, you know, whatever. Kind of need a wee.
So, she's saying that cults make you divide up your worldview into good guys and bad guys. It's true. They do that. It's a useful versus them mentality. People bond over shared rivalry all the time, and it creates a strong sense of loyalty. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Cults depend on that loyalty to prevent you from leaving. Your close bond and your dedication to the other members makes any exit from the cult not a personal choice, but a betrayal of your community. So, someone, please, tell me why she goes through all the trouble to explain that cults make you...
Yeah, I 100% believe, like, a lot of the time asexuality is basically just a way of admitting that, like, you haven't been able to get into a relationship yourself.
Separate your world into protagonists and antagonists, and then on the literal next page tells you that you should sit down and make a list and sort everyone in your life into a list of, and I quote, protagonists and then an antagonist. Maria! This book may be popular propaganda, but can I just say, sloppy. I'm beginning to wonder if she self-published out of choice. Involuntary self-publisher. Is Maria Keffler a dangerous incel? Find out more tonight at 11.
Oh, so, okay, involuntary self. Okay, I get you. Sorry, I was confused for a second.
Like, you might think I'm being facetious here, but come on.
Grab a sheet of paper or open up a new document on your device and draw a line down the center to make 2 columns. Label one column protagonists, people who are on your side, and the other antagonists, those who are working against you. You're going to place the people you know and those of whom your child has contact in one of these 2 columns. Everyone, family, friends, extracurricular activities. Do a bit of research on each of your child's teachers. Get teachers' names from your child or from the
This does feel like a bit of a self-own, so I'm a bit confused by this.
school's online database, or call the front office to ask for names. Peruse Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and or other social media profiles. See what your children's teachers discuss, who they follow and like, and who their friends are in the school system and elsewhere. Follow from them anywhere you are able to do so. Google them to look for their names in news articles, letters to the editor, or for their group affiliations.
If these teachers post anything in support of trans rights, she says you can be sure they are an antagonist. With extracurricular activities, she says if necessary, call the chapter.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, like, a very dumb thing to do. But, like, they're all... Oh, that's a Death Note reference. Like, it's... I don't know, whatever. I don't know, like, the thing is, like, the whole cult thing, it's very dumb. Like, I don't really get cult. Like, you should be very hesitant to call something a cult. It usually, I mean, like, for me personally, I will often say things are cult-like way more than I'd say something is a cult. Because saying something's a cult, that's a big thing.
Leader or the state or national office. Ask specific questions like, what is your policy on transgender identified children whose parents do not affirm?
I actually really need to go for a wee, like, now. Like, I've been holding it in so long. I'm gonna be back, but standard, I'm gonna not go into my actual ensuite because I feel uncomfortable about that. More asbestos. More asbestos. More asbestos. Maybe I'll actually watch Death Note at some point. It's okay. I find like most anime, I don't know, I just can't get over how like weird the dialogue is.
Although she warns that
if you sense antagonism from a group's
how you treat your kid sounds like something somebody who's abusing their child would really benefit from. Advice on
it might be wise to cut ties with that group rather than risk being reported to a child protective service agency.
Advice on how to avoid CPS, finding out how you treat your kid, sounds like something somebody who's abusing their child would really benefit from. Maria Kepler, through Amazon, has been selling a book that includes advice on how to skirt child protection laws and child protection services. This is why supporters of conversion therapy are featured at the front of her book, and why they wrote such glowing reviews, because they need this book to succeed to further their agenda. They have latched onto this book because gay conversion therapy is rapidly becoming illegal. So having the exact same methods repackaged in an anti-trans light, but still available to parents who want to perform gay conversion therapy, makes it more marketable. I personally don't believe there should be guides on Amazon that include how to avoid CPS from finding out about the way you treat your child. And if you don't think that should be sold there either, feel free to let them know. Might not do anything, but you never know. Like, legitimately, I wonder when she was writing that in her book, if she ever thought to herself for a moment, what if this is wrong? Or maybe her ignorance of the facts and her confidence in her position are just actually equally matched. I know that sounds rude, but I'm not wrong. Once you have your list of who...
It's not... Some food went down the wrong way. It's not so. Hello, mine. Oh my goodness me, how did this happen? Hello, my name is Michael. I was about to say my surname. Oh my lord. Hello, hi everybody. My name is Michael, and my voice definitely sounds different. But okay, I can get over the fact that I choked on some pasta and say, finally, it's not so absurd to imagine that she might have, in this situation, or somebody might have considered that they were flouting the laws of the government, but thought that those laws were illegitimate. As indeed, many people who have acted in opposition to the laws of their government have thought throughout history. There we go. Caelan does seem to struggle with this concept of like government laws being illegitimate. I think I'm now better. Okay, all right. This is right. Okay, good. I think what happened, I don't know. Like I think sometimes I get a thing where like when I choke on something, like I get just like loads of phlegm, just like suddenly, and like it just completely builds up and like changes how my voice sounds.
In your life is good, gender critical, and who is evil, everyone else, you're ready to start isolating and manipulating your child. Maria suggests that your protagonist list is going to be much shorter, but you'll need their help. She proposes you out your child to these protagonists, but says your child deserves a certain amount of privacy. But I guess the limits of that are decided by the parent, so not really privacy at all. Oh, hi. You've come to say hello. It's very nice of you. She tells you to enlist the protagonist.
All cats are cute. Every last one of them, except for the uncute ones. Except for the ones with no hair.
In lying to your children using specific manipulation tactics she outlines. Tactics like asking a protagonist to create busy work for the child on the same day as the student's gay-straight alliance meeting so they feel obligated to miss it.
Could you possibly hire her to file papers or do some project at your office after school on Thursdays so she's able to attend the GCA club?
The goal is to completely isolate your child from anyone who may not be anti-trans. To do this, she suggests that it may be necessary to pull your son or daughter from school.
It may be necessary to pull your son or daughter from school. Anecdotal evidence points to positive outcomes for parents who withdraw their transgender-identified children from public school and homeschool them instead.
Oh, well, if it's anecdotal, then why bother even looking into it further before publishing the claim? Why didn't you just say so? She says that
some families have packed up and moved to get out of a school district or community that
To be fair, she did admit it was anecdotal.
promoted gender theory to the extent that the parents felt they could not shield their child from it. Families have taken away internet access and or electronic devices.
she recommends cutting trans children off from family members who support the child as they say they are. She warns, though,
Your child may run away. Your child may self-harm. Your child may call a child protection agency on you. A year or two or more worth of hardship, struggling with an intractable and infuriated son or daughter, may prevent a lifetime of regret.
what? Sorry, where are the numbers backing that up, that like in a year or two or more, your child won't be trans? And why is there no citation for that? Well, I'll tell you, this doesn't work. Conversion therapy doesn't work. That's why it's illegal in any place that has any reasonable protections for LGBTQ plus people. And 1 or 2 or 10 years of your child running away, self-harming, and calling CPS on you might be worth it to you, but what damage does that do to a child? In fact, in her phrasing, she admits that it's the parents' actions that are causing the child to self-harm or run away from home by saying the pain is worth the effort being the parents' authoritarian overreach. If the parents can stop the suffering at any time but choose not to, then they are the ones causing it. A lot of the suggestions in the book involve outright lying and manipulation to isolate the trans child from the rest of society and non-cult members, aka antagonists. Suggestions like breaking or pretending to break your lawnmower so your kid won't be able to work after school as he usually does for the neighbors who respect the child's identity. She says that
if you can find a way to make the undesirable relationship more difficult for your child to sustain, without actually throwing down a command or ultimatum, your child will have less ammunition for calling you a hateful, bigoted dictator.
having less evidence you were lying to them doesn't make it less true, though. Your child being in the dark because you manipulated and gaslit them only serves to benefit the parent. She doesn't even deny that those actions are the actions of like a hateful bigot, but she only suggests ways to conceal that fact so as to more effectively control children. It's gaslighting. She justifies this abuse by saying that
an adult who has good intentions toward a child has no reason to fear the child's parents being involved in the relationship. An adult with bad intentions has every reason to fear the parents' involvement. Circumventing a child's parents indicates either bad intentions or a profound lack of courtesy, common sense, and or respect.
See, while Maria admits that sometimes parental abuse occurs, her conclusions only work in an imagined world where parents are never abusing their kids and everyone deserves all access to information about their children. This world, where children are always most safe with their parents, is not the world we live in. Parents routinely harm their LGBTQ plus children, kick us out, assault them, pour boiling fucking water on them. The reasons why an adult would need to step in, like reporting said abuse, are many and well documented. But Maria, being gender critical, needs to paint a world where only outside forces are a harm to children. Specifically, she likened youth programs for gay and trans people to child predator.
All right, everybody. I am going. Oh, hello. Oh, you know what this probably is from? Does anyone... No, actually, it can't be. No, ignore me. Sorry, I'm just a dumb little Thomas fool. Looks like it's bedtime for this little bear. Not really. I need to call my very good friend Luke. And I need to call my very good friend, my fiance. And then I need to call my very good friend going to bed. And then I need to go to Weymouth. I may not see you guys for a while. I could stream with really bad camera and microphone quality, but it would have to be with no clear purpose. Perhaps I'd play our favorite game, Grand Theft Auto. Goodbye, everybody. It was nice getting through... How much did we get through? 41 minutes of that stuff. Take a break from the internet. It's summer, touch grass. Well, I'll be in Weymouth, so I'll probably touch concrete and sand. But that's close enough. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with not streaming. I mean, to be fair, I don't stream over the weekend much anyway. The only thing we're really missing out on is Friday's stream. It's Friday stream, gotta get down with Friday stream. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend. Friday stream, gotta get down with Friday stream. Everybody's gonna have a good day. Yesterday was... what is it? It's like... Yesterday was Monday, and Tuesday came afterwards. Oh, how's it go? I don't know. Fun, 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 fun. I don't want this weekend to end. It's Friday, Friday.